I would like to call to order the March 17th Avalon City Council meeting. Roll call, please, Denise.
Councilmember Cassidy.
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Here.
Councilmember Sampson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Olson.
Here.
And Mayor Marshall.
Here. If we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Councilwoman Cindy Rubin Cassidy.
Place your right hand over your heart and with me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And in the spirit of St. Patrick's Day, you may sit. I would like to read an Irish prayer. May those who love us, and those that don't love us, may God turn their hearts. And if he doesn't turn their hearts, may he turn their ankles, so we'll know them by their limping.
Alrighty then.
Isn't that great? I got a couple more.
We might make 10:30.
May the good Lord take a liking to you, but not too soon. And one more as we start the meeting. An Irish method of tackling problems. There comes a time when you must take the bull by the tail and face the situation squarely. Okay, any announcements?
None.
Any written communications?
None.
Okay, public hearing.
Yes, I'd like to call forward Audra McDonald to introduce our speaker and the public hearing this evening. Audra, thank you for your help with this.
This evening we will be holding the public hearing that's held annually by Metro. Armini Saint from LICMTA is here to read her little thing that she reads every year, and then we'll take any public comments.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for having me. My name is, as Audra mentioned, my name is Armini Saint, and I'm the Metro's project manager for unmet transit needs, or otherwise known as TDA Article 8. And I'm here to conduct the state-required public hearing. And I would like to start the process with my opening remarks that would explain why I'm here tonight, and then we open it to public comments. Thank you. The public portion of this meeting is held to hear testimony regarding the allocation of Transportation Development Act, TDA Article 8 funds. The California Transportation Development Act, enacted in 1972, provides the major source of state funds to support public transit services. 1/4 of a cent is collected as part of the statewide retail sales tax in this county and placed in a local transportation fund, TDA Articles 3, 4, and 8, which is used to support public transportation within the county. The TDA fund is divided as follows. TDA 4 recipients receive 91.6%, TDA 3 is capped at 2%, and TDA 8 receives a 6.34% share. By statute, most of the money, the 91.6% share, in Los Angeles County goes to support the operation of our regional bus service, Metro, and the municipal operators such as Long Beach Transit and Santa Monica. These services are funded in part by TDA Article 4. Additionally, some of the funds are used to support facilities for pedestrians and bicycles. This is known as TDA Article 3 for the 2% of the share. Article 8 of the TDA requires that a proportional share based on the population, the 6.34% of the sales tax revenue be allocated to those areas in the county that do not have Metro service because they are located outside Metro's service area. These areas are in the Santa Clarita Valley, the Antelope Valley, and Catalina Island. Transit needs can be reasonably met through an expansion of existing transportation systems, by establishing new systems, or by contracting for services. However, if there are no unmet transit needs, which can be reasonably met with these funds, the funds may be used for local public streets or roads purposes. While the purpose of this hearing is to determine how TDA Articulate funds should be allocated, your testimony about the transit needs may be useful to local decision makers who are planning possible uses for Prop A, Proposition C, and Measure R funds. The Los Angeles County Transportation Authority holds a public hearing each year to determine what transit needs exist in your community before recommending how these funds should be allocated. LAC MTA staff will compile your comments along with the comments made at all the hearings, including written comments received before the deadline. The Social Service Transportation Advisory Council, composed of local residents and social service providers, will consider your comments and make a recommendation to the TDA 8 hearing board. The hearing board will make a recommendation to the full Metro board. The Metro board will act in June or July to make the finding about the use of TDA Articulate funds in your in your community. The LAC MTA's board's recommendation will be forwarded to the state for review and approval. If you wish to submit written comments in addition to or instead of testifying verbally, the record for all hearings will be kept open for 2 weeks after the conclusion of the public hearings. Written comments must be submitted by April 1st, 2015 for all affected areas. Your written comment should be submitted to the following address: Armenia Saint, TDA Articulate Hearing, Metropolitan Transportation Authority, Mail Stop 99-4-3, 1 Gateway Plaza, Los Angeles, California 90012, or you could email it to sainta@metro.net. That is sainta@metro.net. The public testimony portion of the hearing will now begin. Please remember to state your name and any organization you represent. Thank you. And I'll open it to the public hearing. Any comments?
I'd like to ask you, so the Article 8 funds,
Yes.
are they there for cities like Avalon as well?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And how can we benefit from those?
It pays for the transit service, correct?
Oh, for our transit?
Yes,
Oh, here in Avalon?
yes.
Yeah, we receive about $120,000 a year.
Oh, nice.
This year's allocation, FY16 allocation, has not been published yet, and neither has it been approved by Metro Board. So I can't tell you about FY16. We are a year ahead determining the funding level for the future year.
Okay.
So, but for FY15, you have received $140,000.
What do we use that money for?
For Dial Ride, and then the art program, and also Dial Ride and art.
Okay. Art is...
It's the blue tickets, blue taxi tickets, and then the Dial Ride.
Oh, good. Okay, great. And that's a good program for our community. Thank you very much.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, have you, for you, Audra specifically, have you already submitted requests
Yes.
from the city?
A city Audra submitted a claim form.
Yes.
Yeah,
It was,
okay.
It was processed. I know I processed it.
The council has to adopt the resolution allowing me to submit the claim
Claim
form
form.
every year.
Right.
So you guys adopted the resolution, I believe, in December?
Yeah,
And
okay.
then we submitted the claim form.
I do remember that. I just know that we have a 2-week window. Do we want to go after some additional funding to submit written comment? Do we need to?
This,
The funding is
this,
based on formula.
it's
Okay.
based on a formula.
So we're already
It has
there. Okay,
not-
I just want to
it
make
has-
sure that I made the comment if we wanted to put something in writing. We have 2 more weeks to do that.
2 more weeks to
Yeah.
No, this is just for public comments, does not affect the funding. Funding is based on the population and the
Right.
formula, so.
Okay.
Which is why it's important every census to make sure every person in Avalon is counted.
And what is
That's-
ACT? It says DAR and ACT.
The ACT is the trolley.
Oh,
Avalon Community Transit.
oh.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for having me. Now we'll see you next year.
Thank you. Now, do you close the
Hopefully.
public hearing or do I?
Hopefully.
Okay.
No, you can close because you're the hearing board in this instance. You can close it.
Can I just ask one more question? Is it possible to get a copy of what you just read to us?
Of course.
Okay, that'd be
Of course, I can leave it here
Oh, great.
for you. I don't need a copy.
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, and I can send Audra electronic
Yeah, I
as
just
well.
want to reread.
Of course, of
Okay,
course.
thank
No
you.
problem.
There's no other comments. Public hearing is now closed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And presentations.
Yes, Mayor, we have, well, actually 3, but listed as 2 this evening. The first one is by Southern California Edison Phase 2 water rationing. Jeff Lawrence is here to give an update.
Good evening. My name is, good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council and city staff, and members of the community. My name is Jeff Lawrence, project manager for Southern California Edison and our Stage 2 water rationing project. I'm joined by Ron Garcia as well, who will have an additional update at the conclusion of the Stage 2 update. What you're looking at is the current reservoir level, which is at 273 acre feet. Since February 19th, we've seen a 2-acre decrease in the reservoir level. So unfortunately, we haven't seen the rainfalls we were all hoping for, but we have been able to maintain the water level in the reservoir fairly consistently due to all the rationing efforts. This slide here shows our water usage for the month of February compared to the prior year. In February 2014, the blue chart on the left, we had 20 acre feet of water consumed, and we realized over a 6 acre foot reduction in last month, which amounted to a decrease of 31.73%. That while our visitor counts increased by 5,732 people, which is an increase of 11.63%. So really considerable water reduction through the rationing, while visitor counts continue to increase as we've seen all year. What you're looking at here is the results of Stage 2 rationing since we implemented in August of last year. And this is compared to our baseline period. So you're looking at June 2012 through May 2013 here. Through the baseline period from August through February, over 216 acre feet of water were used, compared to 143.42 acre feet since Stage 2 rationing. Considerable reduction in water use over the baseline period, which amounts to a 73 acre foot decrease in water consumption during Stage 2 water rationing, just slightly under a 34% decrease. That while visitor counts have increased by over 23%. So when you see us out in the field, Sarah Hall doing code enforcement, these are the violations that we're citing people for, using potable water for discretionary purposes, watering their lawns and plants and that type of thing. For the month of February, our water violations have remained relatively flat, very little change since the last month. We're at 84 violations thus far in water rationing. Apologize for the blurriness here, but what this is showing you is the customers that have received a second violation resulting in a flow restrictor. Now, a large number of these customers have fire suppression systems, so we will not install the flow restrictor on those water meters. But thus far, 130 customers have received a second violation. If you look at the trend since the first of the year, we've seen the flow restrictor violations diminish considerably and remain relatively flat through February. Of the 130 accounts that have received a second violation, 105 of them are residential and 25 of them are commercial. And of those 130 accounts, we've installed 78 flow restrictors. Most people are electing to leave the flow restrictor on the second violation. We've had 2 customers so far actually have the flow restrictor removed, which they can do after a minimum 3-day period.
For a price?
I'm sorry?
For a price?
$200 is the removal fee essentially.
Okay.
So our forecast has remained fairly constant the last couple months due to the fact that we haven't seen any significant rainfall. The red line, which is our forecast day, is a 3-year trend average, which would have us in stage 3 water rationing come August. That did get extended a couple weeks. We were forecasting July last month. Forecast B, which is we feel fairly confident in our forecast that we'll continue to see the benefits from stage 2 water rationing. And we'd be looking at stage 3 water rationing come October of this year. And as usual, we have our 800 number available for all of our customers. Should they see any violations in the field they'd like us to look into, we'd be happy to respond and answer any additional questions on our water rationing as well.
Jeff, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Something just doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
So, and you may not be able to answer this, but let me ask the question, and then if you need to come back or offline, respond back. So, right now, today, we're utilizing approximately 160,000 gallons, which is less than the capacity of the desalination plant, right? And if we were to get no more rainfall, what this document says is that we would potentially be in phase 3 in possibly August, possibly October, right? So at a certain point, somewhere in June, the desal plant is unable to produce 100% of the needs of water for the community when we have our guests arrive and all of that. So if we're then at the need of 600,000 gallons a day in our busiest months, and I might be wrong, it might be 500,000, it seems to me that this water level would be dropping a lot sooner than this August or potentially October timeframe. I'm having a hard time thinking, how is it when we use the most water that we can actually make it through the summer, and when we're back to having the plant produce a majority of the percentage of water needs, that we would be pushing that forward. It just seems like realistically we're going to use up our water and be in phase 3 closer to mid-July. So can you just help me understand how it is that where we are today we're so close to already being in phase 3 and we haven't even we're just about to go into our season.
Mm-hmm. So off the top of my head, my recollection is going into stage 2 rationing last summer. We saw reservoir levels drop between, I think, roughly 20 acre feet per month during the peak months, during our big tourism season. So you're going to start to see the reservoir level drop when we get into the April, May timeframe. But we have 73 acre feet until we hit that 200 acre foot level. So based on the demand that we're forecasting, supplementing the water demand with the desalination plant, you're going to see a gradual decrease in that reservoir that should not hit 200 acre feet till August, based on what we've seen historically. So the 3-year average that we're looking at, we're typically seeing, like I said, around between 20 and 25 acre foot in those peak months. So the 73 acre feet that we have until we hit 200 feet, you're looking at a several months supply in the peak months.
Okay, thank you. I guess that goes to say to Councilmember Hernandez's comment the last time, which is we get to phase 3 right as it's time for us.
My concern is where's phase 4 going to be? I mean, do we have a projection for stage 4 yet? After stage 3?
No, we're not forecasting that. That would be a 150 acre decrease in the reservoir. A forecast like that would be so speculative and so many variables that wouldn't provide much value.
Okay.
And won't the RO plant keep plus above 4, if it's 200 acre feet a year, it makes? Assuming it
it's-
doesn't break.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say with the summer months. With the demand in the summer months, you could still see a reservoir level, but it'd be highly unlikely.
And if we do get into 3, supposedly the water use will be reduced additionally.
Right. Correct.
Do you have any updates on, you guys were doing some research and some kind of a study on what you might do when we start getting into stage 3 water rationing? Do you guys have any more information on the contingency plan when we do get into that?
Yeah, we have 5 alternatives that are being considered in the study that the vendor we have hired is now doing a cost analysis on. So we're not ready to go public with what that study is because we haven't gotten the final results, but we do know alternatives that are being considered and investigated for operational feasibility and fiscal impacts. So I'm hopeful within the next month or so we'll have some definitive results to share with you.
That would be nice. Then maybe the public can write letters as well and give their own feedback as to what they might request that they'd like as well, and what makes them feel good about this. Okay, yeah, we're looking forward to hearing some of the results of those studies that you're doing about that, because everybody's chomping at the bit about this. This is kind of a contentious issue, and we just want to make sure that we have enough water. That's all.
Understandable.
Thanks, Jeff.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Vaughn's is selling 4 cases of water for $10. So run on out there and pick some of that up.
88 cents a gallon.
And the impacts to our landfill are?
Well, if you can crush them, there are people around town that are taking them over town and getting money off of them. So let me know if you need somebody to pick up the plastic bottles from your house. I'll be happy to send them
Perfect.
your way.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. My name is Ronald Garcia. I'm the Region Manager, Public Affairs, Southern California Edison Company, and I always need to start my presentation with safety is our #1 priority, as I'm sure it is for your families and your employees. I just want to remind you that tomorrow, March 18th, you may have received a note from me saying we're going to have a safety alert. Earlier in the year, I gave you a little booklet, Government Guide to Emergency Contact Numbers. Well, tomorrow we're going to implement a test of that system. So Mr. Harvey has been notified. I've notified Dennis and well, Mayor, I think you are on that list as well too. We may be contacting you just to notify you that tomorrow we're implementing that test. It starts at 8 o'clock with a phone message notification either at your home, your office, or if you've given us your mobile phone there. And then it asks you to tune in at 9:30 so you can hear whatever the message would have been had it been a real emergency. We know that someday soon we're going to have, not if, but when we have that earthquake that's going to be so disruptive, we're going to have to be able to communicate with our government agencies. That will be your direct line to get information specific to your city and to what we're doing to restore power or meet your needs. So anyway, tomorrow's the test, 8 o'clock, phone call to remind you. Please respond to us, letting us know by email, because you get an email announcement as well, that someone will be on the conference call, and always Avalon has been a part of that drill and know exactly what to do. So anyway, that happens tomorrow. Secondly, want to share that as we promised, May 19th, and maybe Mr. Harvey's going to announce that the California CPUC, Department of Water and Audits, is coming to Avalon.
Actually, Mr. Garcia, I made a little blunder in that scheduling, and Denise just pointed this out to me earlier today. I scheduled that for when the Mayor Pro Tem will not be on the island. So I spaced out. I screwed up. I need to see if I can reschedule that. I obviously want to have the Mayor Pro Tem involved if we can.
Okay.
My mistake. He's going to be off the island.
Okay,
Cancel the
but
trip.
we
Tell
are
them
in
that.
contact, and we will make
Yes.
those changes, and I'm sure it'll work
For the
out.
19th?
Is that May 19th?
Yeah, but Oli won't be, excuse me, the Mayor Pro Tem won't be here, so
Oli works.
I need to figure out a time that works for all of you guys again. So my apologies. I didn't put his travels on my calendar.
And so when we have this meeting, my understanding is that it will be a community meeting, perhaps in the high school auditorium. Is that possibly where the event would be held?
What we're going to do is we're going to bring to the council a proposed format for it. The idea would be to have all three parties at the table, the city, Edison, and the CPUC, for the reason of Edison being the group that writes the tariffs, the CPUC being the group that reviews and approves them, and then of course the city being the group that lives under them, for an honest discussion about the tariffs and the impact here on the island and some desires for change, some discussion of recent water allocations and how those determinations were made. That's the purpose of the discussion. Also, I'm going to, of course, allow the council to reach out to their constituencies to gather additional questions or concerns that they need to have answered in that forum. Because of the unique arrangement with the three different groups, it's probably not going to work well in this setup here, and we know that there's going to be a lot of interest, so we might need to have it in a different venue like the gym, although that's not been finalized yet. And I'm open to your suggestions on that, of course.
If at all, I'd like to see it done here, if we could do it at all. Because of the audio and video, I think it's important to get it out to the people in the city and the voters.
If you guys are okay with it, it might be a little goofy. We could do something with, I would want to, we can work it out. If you're okay with it being maybe a little
crowded, I mean,
if that's okay with you, we could do that.
But I think it's important to have it audio.
Okay.
But I think they can, Catalina Broadband can remote it from like the auditorium. So we could have TV coverage.
Okay. I'll get you guys some definitive options for you. I know that's of interest, getting it televised, so we'll definitely make sure.
So we're very interested in sharing time with you on that date, whenever it is going to be. And if there's any other concerns or questions, please feel free to ask or send them to me. We want to rebuild your trust in us and improve our relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Proclamation?
Yes, Mayor, we have two this evening. I believe we have Stacy Kelly, who's the ambassador from One Legacy here. Am I wrong about that?
I don't think she made it.
Oh, okay. Well, Mayor, we have two proclamations, and if you'd like to anoint your colleagues to read them for the record.
I'll read the first one.
Okay, very good.
And I'm sorry, you're not here, Mrs. Kelly. A proclamation of the City of Avalon proclaiming April 2015 as DMV/Donate Life California Month. Whereas organ, tissue, marrow, and blood donation are life-giving acts recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need. Whereas more than 123,000 individuals nationwide and more than 21,000 in California are currently on the National Organ Transplant waiting list, and every 90 minutes one person dies while waiting due to the shortage of donated organs. Whereas the need for donated organs is especially urgent in Hispanic and African American communities. Whereas more than 600,000 units of blood per year are needed to meet the need in California. Whereas at any time 6,000 patients are in need of volunteer marrow donors. Whereas a single individual's donation of the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestine can save up to 8 lives. Donations of tissues can save and heal the lives of up to 50 others, and a single blood donation can help 3 people in need. Whereas millions of lives each year are saved and healed by donors of organs, tissues, marrow, and blood. Whereas the spirit of giving and decision to donate are not restricted by age or medical condition. Whereas over 12 million Californians have signed up with the state authorized Donate Life California registry to ensure their wishes to be organ and tissue donors are honored. Whereas California residents can sign up with the Donate Life California registry when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID cards at the California Department of Motor Vehicles. Now therefore be it resolved that in recognition of National Donate Life Month, the month of April 2015 is hereby proclaimed DMV Donate Life California Month in the City of Avalon, and in doing so, we encourage all Californians to check yes when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID card, or by signing up at www.donatelifecalifornia.org or www.donevida.california.org. Dated the last day of, the first day of April 2015. Very nice. Perhaps we can get those on our website? You know, that'd be a nice little thing to put in there and how people could do that.
Sure.
Okay, and then Councilmember Sampson?
Yes. A proclamation of the City of Avalon proclaiming March 2015 as American Red Cross Awareness Month. Whereas since 1943, the President of the United States has proclaimed March as Red Cross Month. Whereas Red Cross Month is a month-long observance recognizing the American Red Cross as a true reflection of the humanitarian and volunteer spirit, and calls on Americans to make a donation, volunteer, take a class, or give blood. Whereas the American Red Cross Los Angeles region uses this opportunity to educate, communicate about the services provided to the public each year and every day. Whereas in 2014, the Red Cross Los Angeles region provided disaster relief, assistance to 600 families, and supported 2,016 clients by providing food, shelter, emotional support, and other necessities. Whereas the Red Cross is chartered by Congress to provide family communications and other support to active duty members of the military and has done so for 130 years. Whereas in 2014, nearly 125,473 individuals locally were trained in CPR, first aid, aquatics, babysitting, wilderness, first aid, and water safety courses. Whereas we encourage individuals, families, and businesses to prepare themselves for disasters by getting an emergency kit, making a plan, and being informed through preparedness education classes. Whereas across Southern California, the American Red Cross provided 400,000 potentially life-saving products for patients in need in 2014. Whereas 4,470 volunteers helped provide direct service to the community locally. Whereas, thanks to the support of Los Angeles community, the Red Cross is there when needed most down the street, across the county, and around the world. Now therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Avalon, in recognition of the importance of the volunteering, your time, making a donation, taking a class, or giving blood, does hereby proclaim the month of March to be Red Cross Month, and urges all citizens to show their support to the American Red Cross Los Angeles region, dated the first day of March 2015. Annie Marshall, City Council.
Thank you. Okay. City Manager's report.
Yes, Mayor, I got a brief update for you all. As you know, Council directed me to embark on a process to procure a third-party water sample and lab test effort to replicate Geosyntec, who's under contract from Southern California Edison, in their testing for PCBs at the Million Gallon Tank and other locations around that area on the west end of the island. So we were able to arrange for that with a firm called Confluence Environmental. A guy named Josh Kearns, who's the principal, actually himself came out here for that. Councilmember Sampson accompanied me and Josh as a witness. We went with Edison and Geosyntec to the ports at the Million Gallon Tank, and at USC, and at two harbors for samples to be drawn before and after the filter as directed. And this is the first of two directed tests, this being the one for PCBs. This did not include the consumer confidence panel test. Just this afternoon, I got the results back. And forgive me, these are new terms to me, so I'm going to do my best to explain them to you all. There's two reports that come back from the lab with the water samples. One's called a level 2 report, and one's called a level 4 report. The level 2 report is the one that comes in first, and it is the smaller of the two reports. It's usually around 200 or 300 pages. And this is the data. These are the actual numbers from the testing. And those numbers revealed non-detect for PCBs in the samples that were drawn. The level 4 test is an evaluation in the raw details of the numbers. It's a much longer report. It's normally around 1,000 or 1,200 pages, We don't have that level 4 report. However, according to Mr. Kearns, usually if you get a non-detect for the level 2, you normally also get a non-detect for the level 4. It's not 100%, but that's usually the way that works, and he will keep us informed of that once we get that. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Well, I think that sounds like great news. And did Edison get their reports back too? You probably didn't get yours back yet, huh? Not quite. Yeah.
They're using a different lab by design, and so ours just came in sooner.
When will the level 4 report be ready?
Mr. Kearns expects it. He thought they'd be ready today. He's hammering them. He hopes for tomorrow.
Okay. Well, Council, any comments?
No, yeah, just, we also asked for a full panel, right? And that hasn't begun yet, or are we doing that?
So,
still, because we gave direction, right? Correct?
Absolutely. Councilmember Hernandez is bringing up what I'm calling in layman's terms the consumer confidence panel, which is a test that you would conduct if you're a water utility. Edison does it, I think, annually, and it shows, if there's any arsenic, if there's other heavy metals, et cetera, in the water. And that's a separate effort. We have not done that yet. I was going to convene with Mr. Kearns tomorrow to figure out when he could come back here to do that. He's indicated that he could be out here very shortly. It requires a whole separate batch of bottles and equipment to do. He has determined the type of items to include in that test. We also would need to nail down some locations to draw that from, but he has some good ideas as to where to do that, but we have not embarked on that yet.
And one of the reasons why we didn't do that first is because he had to actually come to the island and understand what type of test should be done. And so being on the island, touring the island, then he formed an opinion as to the type of test. Right. And so he also, it's a lot more, it's different bottles that he had, and we were rushing as quickly as we could to get the PCB test done. So unless otherwise instructed, that those tests will go forward.
So I'm a little confused because I guess I really didn't know about the consumer confidence one or whatever. Of course, I am very concerned about the public health of our community, but I'm feeling really great about the results from the tests that we received. I guess I'm not sure where that consumer confidence one goes. You're saying it's something that Edison currently does annually or whatever. And I don't know if, I just want to say, is it, what are we going to find and where are we going to look? I mean, if you're going to go to my house and test my water, and I got a problem with it, it's probably because I got some old pipes, but, I mean, so I don't know what all that entails. And so I want to make sure it's something we really need.
The direction prior from council was that, and this is from the last meeting, that there were 2 batches to be performed. One was to replicate the PCB test, and one was to provide this consumer confidence panel. So,
I just thought in my ignorance that was all happening in the one thing. You grab the water here, so you go test for the PCBs, but you're also testing for other stuff in there. I thought that was all it was. I didn't realize it was another trip and another looking elsewhere. But I mean, whatever the will of the council is, I just not quite sure if it's necessary.
Edison does this yearly?
Every water provider, and I don't. Yeah, Edison does it as a minimum yearly. They might do it more frequently. I don't know what the regulatory requirements are for it. I know it at least happens annually, and any water purveyor in California would be required to do the same type of test. And again, you're looking for things like arsenic, heavy metals, things in the water.
Right, but it seems like that's something that would be required more than annually.
I could be wrong. It could be twice a year. I mean, I don't know if Edison knows the frequency that they do that. Do you know, Jeff or Ron?
If you're talking specifically at the tap, no. We test more frequently at our water sources.
I think my recollection is kind of like Arrowhead does it every year. I think it's just a yearly thing, and then what happens is they do the report, and that's mailed to everyone in the city.
So Joe,
It seems like if we're gonna go test water right now, we're testing water that's coming out of the desal plant. We're producing 100% of our water from the desal plant. So it doesn't, I'm not really clear on.
I'll tell you what, this is the thing right now. There's a problem with trust, there's a problem with transparency. The checking the water at the million-gallon tank is only one element about the problems that we're talking about. It's a broad problem that's been happening for a long time with Edison. Okay, it has to do with them not being upfront with us, not answering the questions that we wanted them to ask, that we wanted them to answer, not providing us with a water supply that we can actually bank on for the future of Avalon. It's really concerning us. Our expert consultant also said he'd like to get into that tank and he'd like to take a sample from the bottom of it. But since, 2005, 2003, 2005, 2008, 2011, and 2014, Edison has been vacuuming that tank out ever since they found out that there was PCBs in that tank. They have been cleaning that tank up and getting rid of the evidence. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, if we were to do a broad spectrum analysis of more than just PCBs, I think we might find something. We got to figure out exactly where those documents are from all those hazardous materials that were vacuumed out of that tank, and those are the things that we got to find out what they were. There's definitely a cancer cluster in Avalon. Okay, 1 out of 2 people in Avalon get cancer. I mean, it's a really extremely high rate, and we got to find out why. We got to figure this out. Dozens of forms of cancer, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, Down syndrome, premature childbirth, dead childbirth. These are things that have been on the rise for the last 20 years, up to 800%. And we got to get to the bottom of why. And just saying, oh, there's no problem, we'll just pass it on. I mean, maybe the technology doesn't show it up yet. But we got to have these tests on file so that when technology does improve, we can figure out exactly what this stuff was doing to us. Then we might have a lawsuit into the future. Right now, we have nothing. What did we have? Let's see, basically, we had a turd in the punch bowl. And then we took that water out, we strained it and said, look, there's nothing, here, take a drink of it. I mean, there's no problem because we filtered it out. But the turd is still in the punch bowl, okay? That's the problem that I have with it. Is yes, the filters filter out the problems, the little microbe things, but we don't know exactly what. I'm no chemist, but I did have a chemist tell me there might be a lot of worse things in the bottom of that tank than PCBs, and that scares the hell out of me. My best friend just died of cancer, and I'm over my head with this being okay with just little amounts of poison. Water is, I've said it before, it's the key to life. Our expert consultant did say he wanted to get into that tank and take a test of the bottom of the tank if there's anything left down there. That's him opening up the hatch, dropping something down, stirring up the water where all the sediment is deposited on the bottom of the tank, and getting a sample of that and bringing it out so we can see exactly what that is. I mean, everything's been settled. We're taking water off the bottom of the tank, at least 5 feet off the bottom, 4 or 5 feet off the bottom of the tank. Once the sediment, if you set a glass of water that's stirred up and brown down for a day, everything's going to settle down to the bottom of it, and there's not going to be anything in there. But I guarantee you, at one point there was some pretty nasty stuff in that water, and people were drinking it. So just because it's clean now doesn't mean I'm going to go to bed nice and cozy and just rest easy on the fact that the water's clean now, that they've put some filters in. This happened in 1998. In 1997, I think it was, Edison discovered that there was, it was 1198. So it was November 1998 that they discovered, the inspector of Boyle Engineering discovered that there was really high levels of PCBs in that tank. That's 98, 108. I mean, we're talking 15 years ago. It took them this long to clean that up. That's too much. That's negligence is what that is. So We need to get our expert consultant back over here, let him finish his job. Then we can take all those samples, we can have all that information on file as it is, and into the future, we can have that, store it. We need to also get the samples of all the other stuff that Edison has taken out of that tank from 2003, 2005, 2011, 2014. We need all those documents. Yeah, that's my take on it for right now.
Well, the question is, are they even responsible to have to give those to us?
We can make a request for documents, of course. You guys, I mean, whether they're obligated to, I don't know that they're obligated to, but they certainly, would have to respond to a request from the city, of course.
Now, let me just indicate, because I had a discussion this morning with Edison's, the head of Edison's environmental legal department. And so what Edison has instructed me or asked me to tell you is they're not inclined to let us actually take samples of the materials at the bottom of that for various safety reasons and for protocols. They are, though, treating it like it is a contaminated site. They will be filing a work plan with the Environmental Protection Agency, and they have indicated to me that they will give us all test results that they file with the EPA and other environmental agencies. It's called a manifest, and they will provide that to the city for all tests that are done as they're cleaning out the tank. So that was a discussion I had this morning. They've indicated that they'll take several months to clean out the 1 million gallon tank.
Mr. Harvey, wasn't the sampling protocol on both sides of the filter?
Yes.
So we have sampled water from the tank that has not been filtered?
Yes.
And no PCBs were detected?
The level 2 came back non-detect. We're still waiting for the level 4.
And I believe Edison in the past has said that there are PCBs in the lining of the tank.
Yes.
So when you get to the stuff that's sloughed off, there's going to be PCBs in it, but it's not water soluble, and it's not showing up in the water.
That's true.
It's not water soluble unless you add chlorine to it. What do we chlorinate? What do we do with our water before we drink it?
We don't chlorinate it until it gets to the pump house. It's not chlorinated in the tank.
No, the 1 million gallon tank is chlorinated in the tank.
Well, then where's the PCBs?
They're in the tank. It's like I was saying, they're in there.
No, everybody says they're in there.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the tar
Right.
that lines the tank. That's sloughing off. That's on the
There might
bottom.
be something worse. So we have, what are we saying, that we have no proof of this then? Is that what we're coming down to? Is that we have no proof that there's a problem with the water?
As of right now, the testing that we have done, which was for the independent testing for the PCBs, shows that it's a non-detect PCB level in the level 2 test. We'll get level 4 later, and we have not yet tested for what's called the panel test, which is the test that the state of California requires water agencies do every year.
Let me ask you something. Why do we even have to pay for this? Why can't we call the Environmental Protection Agency to come out and do this testing if we're so concerned about it? I mean, really, let's get to the bottom of what the problem is. Let's call the Attorney General, Kamala Harris, up and get her involved in this. I mean, she passed this Proposition 65 toxic waste. She's supposed to be getting a handle on this toxic waste stuff that's going around. Can't we petition some of our state leaders to get involved so we can have some funding for this?
You could ask.
This is our drinking water.
Again, you could always ask the EPA and actually be the water board to look at this. Typically, though, if they're going to look at it, there has to be some positive test results. And what they will do is, if we would request that, they'd say, "What test results do you have?" And we'd say, "Non-detect for PCBs." And so they would
admit that there was PCBs on the ground outside of the tank.
Yes.
Which is where, okay. Well, why can't we get them to go investigate that? I mean, isn't that, if it smells like it, it must be it.
Again, you could ask. You could
We
ask.
could ask. You could ask. Isn't that your job?
No, I can't do it on my own. I have to get council direction.
Okay. Well, I'm asking for council direction.
If council directs me to do it, of course I'll do it.
Okay, I'm asking for council direction then to write a letter, petition the Environmental Protection. What, are you disturbed by that, Scott?
No, I'm saying
Okay, well, you're
no.
shaking your head at me like there's a problem.
No, not at all. Not at all. If the council directs it, as I've told you, if council directs it, we will happily write that letter, period.
You didn't seem too happy to me. Okay, I'm asking for council direction that we do send a letter to the Environmental Protection Agency. And I'm gonna just call up Kamala Harris myself, and I'm gonna ask her what we need to do about this, so we can get to the bottom of it. Because it's more than that. There's 800 creosote-soaked logs above our water supply in Cape Canyon. Okay? Creosote is refined coal tar. Jesus, man, we got some serious issues that we need to deal with. I don't like to be the one to bring this stuff up, but it's stuff that we need to deal with. We're smarter than this. We don't need to carry this on to the future, pass this problem on to our kids. I hear there's toxic waste all over out there. So a lot of it was spread out by the Conservancy and Edison. Now we need to get to the bottom of it. That's what we call the Environmental Protection Agency. Have them do an investigation on our entire water supply out there. Everything, not just the tanks, but out at Edison Company, go into all their hard drives and their servers, see exactly where all this information is, and get to the bottom of where it's at, where it went, what is the risk to the public. And that's what the people want from us. That's what I'm asking for the city. We write a letter to the Environmental Protection Agency. You guys don't want to do it, that's fine. You can face your constituencies there. But I'm fine.
And I love Joe, but I take a little exception. But I think, when does it stop? I just don't know when it stops with you, when you're going to say, okay, enough is enough, and when, how far down I just don't know, because you're extremely passionate about this, and it's scary to sit there and say all these people are getting cancer and it's because of Edison.
No, I didn't say that.
But
I said that could be one of the causes.
But cancer's on the rise around the world. But so.
And that's okay with you.
No, but it's not okay. But I'm just a little concerned that, number one, we don't create this feeling of hysteria that all of this stuff is happening, and so I don't know how to.
We haven't created it.
I talked to the employees of Edison that are guys that have worked here for years. They are our friends, and they're saying, they wouldn't be working for a company that would be doing bad stuff. They have families here, so I guess I don't know who you can find, who your final God is that can tell you some things are okay. I just don't know how to satisfy that, and I'm not sure how specific. I guess I'm kind of at a loss to how far down this road we're going, and I just don't know.
Well, I put my petition out there. You guys can follow up on it if you want. That's fine. It's up to you.
I don't know, Council, do any of you have any opinions or comments?
I definitely would respectfully like to request an understanding of what the tests are that Edison does, what they're required to do annually. It seems to me that there's got to be something done more than annually, but I'd be curious to understand what's tested, how often it's tested, and are they testing samples from different areas or just from Baker Tank, for example?
I would say that Edison
Edison
can follow up on that without. That's something that they would just be able to provide as public information.
I think the answer is just so you know, as Edison tests every month, and they may be testing more, but every month they test, and then under state law, there's an annual test that the results of that are mailed to everyone in the city.
Right.
But you've got the two Edison representatives right here. They could very easily just take that as direction to come back to you as a consumer, if nothing else.
Okay.
Get it just as soon as we can, by the next city council will be the best to preside.
Well, tomorrow would be great, but I appreciate. I'm asking for you to give additional data, and at the soonest possible point that could be could be given, that would be great.
Yeah, I don't believe that would be much of a challenge to find out how often we test the water. My
Right.
understanding is regularly as we test the backbone of our system
Mm-hmm.
and to our meters, on the other side of the meter, we're not testing. So the residential customers' side of the meter, their pipes, Edison has no control. But
Right.
we're regularly testing our meeting, and then once a year, we submit that information. But I'll get back to you how often, how many times. I know I've been out to Pump House 2 and seen us do testing regularly. So we'll get that to you. Thank you for the request.
Sure.
So
And
re-
then I need to understand a little bit more about what you're asking for, Joe. And part of maybe misunderstanding is trying to absorb a little bit of the discussion here. But I also have spoken to, several participants, and the one thing that I do get from some in Edison is that it's very discouraging to when we say, for example, that Edison is, when it is said, not we, because I'm not saying this, when it is said that Edison is giving us contaminated water, that is taken by some employees of Edison very offensively, because they feel as though they do have families in this community too. And so that's why I want to know how often and what that panel is, so that I can feel that comfort myself. So I guess, Joe, I want to understand better what you're asking of us with the EPA, because we already know that they found contaminants in the dirt, which they're now having to mitigate. They found the contaminants in the liner, which they're having to mitigate.
What do you mean mitigate?
That
Clean
they're
up.
having to clean it up,
They're
and it's
cleaning
all
up?
got to go through hazmat. It's all got to be handled.
The ground?
In the ground as
In the
well.
too.
Right. So they've determined that they have to do that. And so I guess now I need to understand, what more are you asking to do?
I want them to pay for it. To pay for our testing too. I mean, we're asking them to test. Why can't we call them in to do this testing for us? I mean, it's obvious there's a problem. Scott, aren't you the one that said that we have to have some evidence that there's some?
If for the EPA to actually open an investigation, or for the water board to actually open an investigation, one of the questions is they will ask, what evidence do you have? What they will also look at, though,
Isn't this evidence
no,
that we're talking about?
I'm trying to answer. What they will also look at is that Edison has already agreed with the, I guess you would call it spoils that are on the ground, and with the cleanup of the interior of the tank, that is regulated by the water board and the EPA. They have to submit a plan. They have to submit their reports to the EPA. And what Edison's attorney indicated to me this morning is that they will give us all of that data that goes to the EPA.
Okay, so so what I'm asking is, I want all of our water supplies tested. I want the Environmental Protection Agency to come out and check out every watershed runoff and storage area that there is on Catalina. Every aquifer area, every water well cap. I don't think that's much to ask. I don't get it. Hey, you guys, I'm putting it out there. If you don't want to write the letter, that's fine. It's a letter. It's not like we're pulling somebody's teeth out here.
I don't want us to take brutal actions. If we take some action, I want it to have some result, some desired result. And I'm not sure us writing a letter to the EPA is going to get any desired result. We have no smoking gun. We have no smoke.
There's 800 creosote-soaked logs a quarter of a mile upstream from our water supply in Cape Canyon. Should we just keep on?
When we get the report from Edison that they send out annually to all the ratepayers, and
You think they're going to test for that?
we can see if they do.
No, they have to test for it. You have, right? I mean, you have to specifically know what you're testing for before you test for it.
Yeah,
correct?
What is the panel
Correct
that
or
they
not?
text?
I can grab the panel from Lake Arrowhead. I don't have the panel.
Hold on a
for
second.
Allen.
We don't need to do that, because Edison's already said they're going to come back and tell you what they test for. That's already been addressed. Now, I don't know what they test for. I don't know if they specifically test for creosote. I suspect that there probably is a way to test for that. The one thing I have learned in my rapid water education over the last week or so is that there's a lot of effort that goes into putting these panels together. They test for all different types of stuff, and that is why he came out here to look, because depending on geography and location, proximity to other things, that helps them determine what they should be looking at. If you're next to a junkyard, then you want to test for certain types of hazardous materials and metals. And if you're in a sandy area, there are other certain things you test for, on and on and on. So I think, we need to find out. Edison has agreed to tell you what they're testing for annually. We still have council direction on the table to do the consumer confidence test. And if you guys direct us to do something different or something additional, that's fine. Whatever the direction is, we'll do it.
Let me ask a question on the creosote poles, Joe, or whomever can answer this. Those are on Conservancy property, correct? Do you think, Joe, or they're on private property?
Yeah, everything's Conservancy property.
Okay. I'm just curious if the Conservancy has had issue with these poles that are creosote because they're on their property.
I haven't specifically discussed that with them. I'd be happy to do
it
so.
might be interesting to see if they've got a concern, because they've got the wildlife, they've got the vegetation, they've got the visitors. And I guess you say it also leaches into the ground and then could be in our water supply at some point, right?
Yes, highly
Okay.
cancer causing.
Okay,
And
so,
they also sprayed glyphosate for years, 20, 25 years. They sprayed glyphosate on all those fields upstream from a water supply. I think that needs to be checked out too.
is there a point when it just goes away?
No, it goes in it becomes a part of your genetic makeup is what it does. And it's called genetic mutation, and it's something that you live with, and your generations on down the line live with it.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's why we have
Maybe it's easier to test the people. See if they got any of that in their bodies.
I just want to do the best we can to clean
I
up
know.
our environment. In my short lifetime on this earth, I want to leave it a cleaner place than we left it before. We're a little bit smarter than we were when we used all these dirty things in our water and in our environment. And I think that we could just do it a little bit better now. We have the knowledge, we have the technology, the money is there. I mean, the money shouldn't even be a factor, but for some reason, well, who's going to pay for it?
So is this information all public information from Edison? It is?
Absolutely. What they test for, yes. That's why I was pretty confident that they should be able to come
Yeah.
up with it pretty fast.
Right.
Yeah. And it's one of those mailers that you probably, just like me, ignore every year, but it comes to you and it looks generic and it lists all these different things. They're required to mail it to you.
It's a pretty picture on the outside, just a lot of numbers on the inside.
I'd
Yes.
still like to see maybe a full panel thing testing from our end of it, as we were
Okay.
directed from the beginning, from the council. Last time, I'd still like to see that and compare it to what they have.
Okay. I mean, unless
I mean,
council,
that would just,
that is the direction on the table. Unless you guys tell me otherwise, that's the. where
And
we're
so
gonna
my
head.
first question, and about 45 minutes ago, was this direction came from the last meeting, but where are we asking them to test? Are we asking them to pull from
So
Baker
the-
tank? No,
what-
not the Baker tank, because that's desal
What
water.
we had.
That's not a bad idea. The Baker tank is not a bad thing to test.
So a couple things. So we had asked Mr. Kearns to help us identify locations for the testing, and so as he's come to understand the system a little better, he recommended doing a test over in Hamilton Cove, and then doing tests in Avalon proper, and then probably doing some tests over on the west end as well, just to have an idea of what the different locations look like. Now, some of these tests would require the assistance from Edison if you're not going to be testing inside a house, as the mayor was talking about. If you're looking to test more from a source, then you're going to need to have Edison's involvement, because they have to escort you onto their property. Now, I don't think that there would be an issue with that necessarily. All indications from the discussions I've had with Edison on this have been friendly in this regard. So that's why I haven't come back to you to say that, we're having a problem.
And those are the kind of sources you're thinking of, Joe, that they're talking about? Are you talking about in-home sources as well, or are you just talking about I mean,
Well, I think that's what we need to maybe indiscriminately test a couple of houses just to see what's there. I mean, we probably got pretty good water coming out of the tap, but it's while we're doing this, maybe we should check a couple of sources: Hamilton Cove, Baker Dam, a few places in Avalon, maybe the desalination plant coming in, see how that water comes out. I would think. I mean, is that, Beal, is that what you're talking about? A little broad panel testing?
Well, they would be the experts in it. I don't really know what they would
Okay.
test, but I would leave it up to their judgment to figure out where they need to test it.
The expert-
And I could, with the scientists, if we're gonna go full panel, I feel.
The last
I feel
direction,
pretty good with
the
that.
last direction of the city
First-
council was to
Okay.
test panels, and that's why we brought Josh over, and that's why he toured the entire island, and he's come up with some recommendations as to where he would test. And so unless there's a change in direction, we're going to go forward with those tests, period.
Let's just go with what Josh said then. He's the expert, he's the consultant. I mean, he's telling us what we should do. We just showed him where everything's at, and then he came up with his own determinations on his own. So we'll leave that to the expert. I would think that was the best thing that we should do.
okay. Seems to be consensus with nodding of the heads.
Okay.
What are your thoughts now that we've had this discussion?
Mine?
Mm-hmm.
I just come from the glasses half full and kind of rosy in my thinking and would like to think everything is fine. But if and you know, my constituents don't really, I think the people that are listening, I think for a lot of the people, the initial paranoia and whatever will feign because of what we've decided. So I'm excited about that. But if the council feels we should continue to go on the testing, I'm just one little person. So, and it seems like there's a consensus. If we, again, I understand it a little better now what we're going to be doing. So if y'all want to proceed with it, I'm not going to be the one to say don't.
The Edison Consumer Confidence Report is online.
Oh, been looking on the internet, have you?
And I don't know what you would call petroleum products.
Okay. Well, Ron, maybe you can help distinguish what that is. Can you track that down? Okay.
Or are you testing for petroleum products?
Like creosote, you mean?
So it's,
Is that one of the agents that's listed in the consumer?
no,
It's not listed, okay.
it doesn't look like it.
Okay. So Ron, if you could help us with that, that'd be, thank you.
So if you want to go to SCE Catalina, and they have a consumer confidence report, so you can look at it. Unfortunately, it's from 2013, so it's a year and a half out of
Yeah.
date.
I still want to, I mean, you know, I know Ron will get me, I would like to know where where Edison tests already, how often they test, and what they test for. So I would be more inclined to get that information before determining to spend more taxpayers' dollars.
I'll concur.
Okay, so help me understand my direction, council.
Depends what the mayor says.
Yeah. I'm not saying that I don't want to test further. I would like to give Edison an opportunity to answer my questions, which are how often, where are you testing, and what are you testing for? And if that comes back and they test every 3 months in all the places that we want to test, and all of that has to go to all the agencies already, I don't feel that it's appropriate to spend taxpayers' dollars to redo all of this testing. But if it comes back, it's once a year, they test for a quarter of what we're looking for, and they test in one location, then I would be happy to move forward with a full panel at a couple different locations, and we determine that. So I think at this point, I would like more information.
And we're also going to be getting already that gentleman is going to be providing us with the information about where he would test and what he would test for. That's going to be coming
Right.
back to us already, right?
Well, I guess, yes, I'm just trying to figure out, we have an existing direction from you. You can certainly modify that. As part of that existing direction, yes, he has formulated an idea as to where he'd like to come test for a full panel.
Wouldn't it be interesting to see what he's formulating and how it compares to what they're doing? So I don't know.
I mean, Joe and I'm sorry, Councilmember Sampson and Hernandez, do you guys feel that we could wait till one more council meeting and gather this information from Edison and make a definitive agreement of what, where, and all of the testing that we want to do? That we could actually make a plan after knowing what they're doing and what we're comparing against?
And again, I'm not the expert in that field. It would be the gentleman that's going to take the test. And I'm sure Edison has their guys, but it doesn't mean they're going to be taking the test from the same area. It might be a whole different area. That's why I'm kind of thinking, why don't we just go forward with our panel thing, see what our guy comes up, and compare with what Edison has. That's just what I'm saying.
I understand the leap of goodwill that you're stepping out with, and
I mean, that's just
I commend you for that. Because, but I'm not that trusting of Edison. I'm sorry.
I know.
I'm just not. There's been too much water under the bridge right now, and I don't trust Edison. I don't trust their records. I don't trust their recording. I don't trust their testing. I trust the panel that we hired, Confluence. That guy's a good guy. He's very professional, and he's an expert. I trust him because he's our guy for right now. I want to get on board with Edison. I want to be able to have a working relationship with Edison, and into the future, that's something that I think Edison needs to do. Reach their hand out to us too, and be a little more honest and transparent, clear, forthright, helpful. And if they do that, man, we can work together into the future. But if not, we got a long, hard road ahead of us. So I commend you for you're reaching out to them, and I'm glad that this panel has some people that have some faith in the company of Edison. I'd like, hey, I will too, maybe one of these days, but not right now.
So it sounds like that we're proceeding with the consumer confidence panel. Am I understanding the direction, Council?
I kind of like Cindy's thing, what's it waiting for the next meeting, but if it's not going to change Joe's mind, I would like to think, Councilman Sampson's mind, I'm sorry, but with this other gentleman coming forward with where he's going to show you where he would want to test and all that. So what if his testing sites are the same? Doesn't matter, we still don't trust what Edison has been giving us, so I guess we're going to have to proceed.
But do we want to wait for the next council meeting before we pull the trigger on that?
Okay, so we're...
Could be fine.
Well, okay. We're likely to convene a special council meeting on the 31st. We could have that as part of that.
And we would have more information from the testing gentleman that you dealt with and the level 4 results and whatever. I'm willing to let it wait till March 31st.
Okay, so am I.
Whatever the council's direction is.
That's about 2 weeks away. Less. 2 weeks.
It doesn't matter. I will not be at that meeting, as you know, but it's okay. I will have somebody in my place will discuss it.
I was thinking one of the things we would do is we would have, if that's council direction, we'd ask for our expert to be here at that meeting.
For Joe Burns or Sean?
No.
Sean?
Well, no, we could have either Sean there, but maybe Josh.
Josh Kearns.
You're Josh.
Josh Kearns.
Oh, Josh Kearns.
Yeah.
Oh, Josh Kearns will definitely be there.
Right, yeah, right.
Yeah, Josh actually had offered to be here tonight, and I said, it's not agendized. We didn't know the results were in. I said, just hold off until the council gives. Yeah.
Okay. Big problem with waiting till the 31st, Joe?
No, I mean, the sooner the better. But you know what? The evidence is gone. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they already vacuumed up all that.
Well,
stuff and you know what? Go ahead.
What they told me was, again, they told me this morning, and so, again, we have to take them at their word, but that it's going to take several months to remove the stuff from the tank. And so it will be there for several more months. That's what I was told this morning.
That's going to be a hazmat site. No one's going to be allowed close to that area. That's probably why they're not going to let us in there. I mean, there's documentation they're gonna have to contain all that material in there, put it in 55-gallon containers and have it shipped off the island. So,
This isn't a place where like children play, is it? I mean, I don't know where it's sitting. Is it sitting like right in the middle of the?
South the Isthmus Road.
So it's not like it's someplace where kids are romping around and.
But you can get little hikers around there, I'm sure.
yeah,
Up around that
Here.
area.
Oh.
that's,
It's right by the campground.
Okay, well, okay, looks like we're gonna wait a couple.
Okay, so it sounds like what we're looking to get, and tell me if this is accurate. So Edison is going to come back and explain what they are testing for as part of their annual or quarterly requirements, the types of things, how often, where,
Right.
all those details. Okay, Ron, does that sound? Okay, so they're going to come back prior, get that to me before the 31st meeting. I will work with Josh Kearns, who already is developing what he would like to test for in the locations, and we'll present to you both of those items so that you can see how the two mesh or don't mesh.
Okay.
Would you let Josh know about the 2013 report online?
Yes, I will. And I will also specifically speak to Josh about testing for certain concerns like creosote and
glyphosate.
the glyphosate. I'll see what type of test.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, City Manager, do you have any other report?
Actually,
Moving right along. Oh, you do. Never mind.
I do need to mention one thing which should have been made during the announcements. Thank you, Captain Federal. On the 24th of this month, Sheriff McDonald, yeah, I guess I was thinking of our assemblyman all of a sudden too, is going to be here on the island. And just like we did when Congressman Lowenthal was in town, we're going to have a special city council meeting so that all of you can interact with the sheriff at the same time. And of course the public will also be invited. It'll be just an informal type meeting where it's just kind of like a meet and greet, but it will be noticed so that the public and stakeholders and you can all interact. The 24th, it's a Tuesday, I think. No, Monday?
Of March?
Tuesday. Yes.
Of March?
Oh.
One
Yes.
week from today?
Yes.
Okay.
In the morning?
Yes, because there's a water consortium meeting that same day. So Captain Federal is working on the logistics of that.
Tuesday.
That consortium meeting's over town.
Yes.
It is.
We have to take 11 o'clock boat.
It'd be a brief meeting, so it would still get you on the boat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I expressed that to the captain. We had to make sure that that could happen.
Okay. Okay.
That's it.
So you guys are going to have a consortium meeting next week in Overtown?
On the 24th. And so just like the last one, I will be present as a staff member. I will write up a summary and I will get that to all of you.
Who's going to that meeting?
The mayor and the mayor pro tem and myself.
I thought we were going to start mixing that up and putting different people at that meeting.
It's up to the council. You guys could certainly choose to do that. I'm just the staff member that's present, but certainly if you guys wanted to rotate delegates, that's up to you guys how you want to handle that.
Who attends that meeting exactly?
It's made up of island stakeholders, so it's the island company, it's the Conservancy, it's Hamilton Cove Homeowners Association, it's USC, it's the camps, the city.
City of Avalon?
Uh-huh.
That's okay.
Yep.
What about any public members of the public? Is any members of the public invited?
No.
They're not invited?
No.
at all? Is there a
And that's-
reason for that?
Yeah, because it does have legal aspects to it. There is the potential for litigation and some other things that the consortium considers, and so it is a closed discussion.
Okay, so are we going to get a report back from that meeting in the city council meeting? Is that what we do with that?
What I'll probably do is, like I did last time, is I'll type up a summary of the meeting and what took place, and I will give it to each one of you.
Do you have an idea of is there any kind of an agenda to this meeting?
So what my understanding of what will be discussed this next time are a couple housekeeping things. So for example, you guys authorized the contribution of $10,000 to join the consortium. So I will announce that to the group, and I expect that there will be other members that will report back that as well. The next logical thing I think that would have to be discussed is the timing of things. Edison completed the rate, the PUC approved the rate case, so now the next thing on the horizon is they're filing to divest themselves of the water and the gas utility assets. And so that will really put a lot of things in motion. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion about the speculation about that timing. The other thing I think that would probably come up in this discussion, because it came up last time, is the nature of how the consortium wants to look. Does it want to be a community services district? Does it want to be a joint powers authority? Does it want to be something in between? That's what I expect the nature of the discussion to center around.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to know what you guys talk about in depth.
Sure, absolutely.
And if there's some minutes to that.
Yeah, and again, I can redistribute what I gave last time, and it'll be very similar to that. I tried to be pretty detailed as far as what we covered.
I'd also like to inject that I feel that we need to seriously think about doing something about our water supply into the future, like either dredging or revamping our desalination unit. And I know Mr. Garcia wrote us an email that said basically it's just too expensive to put more desal in, but I think it's ridiculous that we drill more wells that are only drawing salt water, yet we don't have enough money to spending millions of dollars on, let's say, the Howlands well. It's drawing salt water, not getting anything for it. We buy a desalination unit, revamp the one we have, maybe make it a little more, just upgrade it, update it, higher output. I mean, those are the conversations that I would really like to inject that happen in this consortium meeting. I mean, regardless of where the city goes, we need water, and we need to do something about it now. And I think it's ridiculous that we spend so much money on something that's not working. When we said it wasn't going to work to begin with, said that Howlands well was just a ridiculous proposition. Millions of dollars later, we have water that we should be washing our sidewalks with. That's all we have. It's not fresh water you can drink. Anyway, that's just what I'd like you to think about when you go to the meeting. And that's all.
Okay. So are we done to city attorney's report?
Two quick things. The plastic ban, bag ban, there was some more, there's people signed enough petitions for that, so it's on the ballot in November, which means that does not go into effect until after that. So stay tuned. And then second, late breaking, Edison, pay attention. This morning, the State Water Resources Control Board enacted a whole bunch more restrictions on water for the drought. And included in that is now you can only do outdoor irrigation twice a week. I think we already have that. But the new one that applies statewide is that no outdoor irrigation 48 hours after any rainfall. So if it rains, you have to you cannot water. Now that's assumed that we ever get any rain. They are also looking at more regulations to tighten up water. This is a statewide regulation. It applies across the board to everyone. So again, for Avalon, it's 2 days a week and no watering after any rainfall for 48 hours.
I think we should write a letter to Governor Brown and tell him that Avalon and the island needs to be the poster child for water conservation, because I can bet, except for those cities that have totally just run out of water, I don't think anybody has done any better than we've done in our community. You know, tourists up, water down. I mean, it's amazing what we're doing, and so.
Can I go back to your plastic ban?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, get back to that.
I may not have heard that correctly, so could you please repeat
Okay, so
that?
so the state of California passed an absolute ban on the use of plastic
Right,
bags.
which was to go in effect
which
July
was going
1st.
July 1st. And so the plastic bag companies petitioned, got 800,000 people to sign petitions outside of grocery stores. saying that we want to we want to rescind that legislation. In other words, the voters of California say we want to be able to use plastic bags. And so at the November ballot, there's going to be, I don't know what proposition it is, but the voters of California will decide whether they want to use plastic bans or not the legislature. So it's in our hands.
But we could come back to, the city could go back to its discussion from a year ago and potentially.
I believe so, although I want to make certain that the language in this proposition, because sometimes what they do is they put a little language in there that says that you may not be able to ban plastic bags. So it's it's one of these things where they say it's one thing and then it's like 20 pages of legalese.
Well, do you think that we could ask Vons or Hagan to voluntarily do that?
Yes.
I think we did, didn't we?
You can always ask. Yes.
Did we ask them before?
We did not ask them before.
I don't know.
We didn't?
Pass the resolution.
So, I mean, I think that's something we may want to do, is just ask them nicely if they would do that with this new, with it, whatever happens in the grocery business. Or even starting. What did you just say? Starting July 1 our own, doesn't it?
I thought you said the new store.
No.
I could be mistaken.
So anyway, okay, so.
Okay.
Interesting.
So,
Right.
I mean, that's a letter we could put out now asking them to please do that. I mean, that would.
Again, if there's 3 votes, yes, we can do that.
Is there 3 votes to ask Vons?
I'm interested in asking Vons if they would please discontinue the use of 7 plastic bags for a gallon of milk and look at the possibility of charging 10 cents a bag for.
Or they could, those other ones they sell for $1, for the nice ones. So, I mean, is there 3 of us that would like to ask them to?
I have a legal question for Legal Eagle over there.
Yes.
Don't most of the bans allow the store to charge, say they can charge 10 cents a bag?
Yes.
Actually, most of the
You say they must?
they say they must charge 10 cents a
So we
paper
don't,
bag.
we don't have that legislation.
No, not in this city.
And so if we tell Bonds to get rid of all the plastic bags, theoretically they're giving away paper bags?
Yes, we could ask them to make paper bags available at no cost to the residents.
I wouldn't even care if they charged 10 cents, but.
I'm probably on board.
I'm concerned about our landfill. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about water. We're going through, 1 million plastic bottles a year now that are going into a, part of that it may end up in our landfill. These plastic bags are ending up in our landfill. I mean, we need to not only be concerned about water, but the impacts of water, and this is one of those impacts.
And our
Okay.
hillsides.
We're hearing 3, at least 3, for giving direction to staff to
I don't
send a
think it
letter
hurts to ask.
to Vons. Okay.
Anything else to report?
No.
Okay. Council member report. Let's see how we're going to move along now.
We can't do this, huh?
Cindy, Councilwoman.
Okay. I attended the monthly Gateway Cities Council of Government meeting the first Wednesday of the month. 2 pieces of wonderful information came from it. One was the possibility of adding Avalon to Los Angeles counties, no veteran unhoused, and I've done a little bit of research as to whether or not we need to be included in that, and it doesn't appear that we do, although I do have a couple further questions I want to ask. So that was one piece of interest. The second one was there's another program out there that I've asked that Avalon be included in, which we originally weren't, which is a Replace Your Ride program. I've given all of that information to Jordan Monroe, and it is a program for essentially funding an individual could go after if they're within a certain zip code, one, which Avalon wasn't included, and second of all, a certain salary range, and to replace vehicles of a certain age or older, or vehicles. As we know, we have some vehicles in town that should be replaced, and folks that are unable to financially do so. So that is a program that may or may not work for us. I've given that information to Jordan. And for the last council meeting, I have just finalized and convened a discussionary group to talk about the effects of Phase 3 water rationing, how that will affect the businesses in the community. I do have one other person to reach out to, which I will do tomorrow, and make sure that she's invited to this meeting. But that meeting will happen this week, and I'm happy to give a brief report at the next council meeting. And then the only other thing I want to make sure transfers over to the mayor report is to discuss the first week of April council meeting. I want to make sure we don't leave before doing that.
Yeah, I just have a kind of interesting, somebody gave me, have we had any reports on cats getting killed by dogs? 4 weeks ago there was a dog mauling cats. Then a week ago there was 3 more cats mauled up here. Because I was out the other day with my dog and I saw 2 pit bulls running around, and I don't know what we need to do or how we can enforce that. I don't know if the sheriffs could help us in any way with the code. I just don't want it to see us get to a point where it really takes a serious turn, and next thing you know, there's a little kid getting mauled, there's somebody walking a dog, there's dogs running around, they're not on leashes, there's dogs on leashes biting people. I would like to see us take a good effort and make something happen. People that don't have dogs on their leash, hey, give them $100, I don't know what it is, $100 warning, next time it's $200 fine, I don't know. I just like to see us take a little more serious stand on this, because my little granddaughter was walking our dog, and I don't want one of them big dogs running out. I mean, something's gonna happen. It's going to happen, and we need to be a little more on it to stop it from happening. We need to start writing citations. We need to start making people accountable for letting their dogs loose. And this is kind of serious stuff. And I've seen it. I saw it the other day. I was up by Vaughn's. Guys with 2 pit bulls. One of them got off the leash, went right across the street to Vaughn's and started attacking another dog. I told him, hey, let me call code. And he says, no, I know the guy's dog. I don't want to do anything. I says, that's not right. Anyway, with that being said, I would just like to see us be a little more, I don't know what we could do. What can we do? I don't know. We have only so many code people. I don't know what the limitations for the deputies are, or we could work together. I don't know. But we need to do something. Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen bad. And we don't need that in our town.
Sure. We've received a couple of reports on this, and Denise, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
I was just going to say, you got a couple issues there, Richard. The first one on cats being attacked and killed. The code guys were on that, and they think they have resolved it, and the 2 dogs that were getting out at night that were doing that have left the island. But as far as the dogs being unleashed and attacked, that's something that is ongoing, and I know that they are issuing tickets, and people are going to court for that.
Okay. It just seems like there's different times, too, that people are seeing them. Some in the morning, some late at night. I don't know how we could fix that. I don't know if we send them out earlier or later. I don't know. But something's going to happen. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for the city. We need to make something be positive out of this. We need to stop this before it happens. And that was just my
Sure.
Councilmember Sampson?
Oh, yeah, I was just noticing that the health fair is scheduled for May 7th.
Great.
Right? Yeah, Academy Health Fair. And that will be in the beautiful Casino Ballroom, May 7th. And I want to make a correction as well. I don't have enough enemies already. Okay, in the paper last week, there was 2 articles written in the Bay News and in the Islander about the foxes. Okay, I want to make a correction to that because I keep rewriting history and they keep rewriting history. And I happen to work for the Candleton Island Conservancy from 1994 to 1998. In Avalon, there was no reported cases of canine distemper and parvo, but the Conservancy went ahead and blamed the dogs of Avalon for introducing parvo, canine distemper, into the fox population, which is just a ridiculous proposition. As the years went on, they kept doing it, and I kept refuting it because I know for a fact that the Conservancy introduced dogs into Catalina via the Institute for Wildlife Studies to hunt the pigs and the goats. There were Catahoula hound dogs. They introduced as many as several hundred dogs, and I did witness the Conservancy's IWS's Catahoula hound dogs dying in litters, puppies, grown dogs. Well, this recent article that the Catalina Conservancy published is saying now that it was a stowaway raccoon. I think he had a high patch on too. Anyway, I just think they're getting ridiculous again. I want to make sure that I put the history of our island on track here and just say that the Conservancy just needs to take responsibility for what they did. We asked them to do an environmental impact report on what could possibly happen if they did use these methods for hunting the pigs and the goats. And they didn't do it. They didn't take heed, and they didn't bring over clean dogs. They brought over dogs that were dirty. So, basically, the decimation of the Catalina Island fox was because the Catalina Island Conservancy was negligent. That's why our foxes were decimated. Now, let me add something to this. The Conservancy does a lot of good things for Catalina. I support the Conservancy. I'm a member of the Conservancy. I volunteer for the Conservancy when they let me, because I say things like this. They don't like me around too often, but that's just too bad. They need to listen to me out, because what I'm saying is the truth. It's a fact, and it's the way history is going to go down. And it's the way I'm going to see it down, because I don't like the people of Avalon getting blamed for things that they don't do. And I don't believe for a minute that a stowaway raccoon jumped on a boat, came over here, and introduced canine distemper and parvo into the fox population. That's what my dad used to call gobbledygook. And that's it for me.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks, Joe. I've got a couple of 4 things. First off, on Cruise Ship Day, there's a lot of people parked down by the mall in our 1-hour parking for, it appears to be more than 1 hour. And do we have a plan for fixing Step Beach? Because the weather's been so nice, and there's been people over here just flocking around.
Yes, I believe that we're preparing documents to go out to public bid for that shortly. Am I right about that, Dennis? Yeah.
Is there a sand replacement for Middle Beach and South Beach?
I don't think South Beach, but Middle and Step were included in there. Do we have South Beach included for sand as well? We can modify that or take a look at that.
Or screen it or something, because there's a lot of little pebbles.
Little goodies, okay.
I also went to the League of California Cities LA Division monthly meeting, and unfortunately we weren't quite as informed about exciting things as Councilman Cassidy. We did get to learn about railroad safety, which isn't necessarily applicable over here yet. And the last thing is, I have got a couple of emails today, and I don't know if there's anything we can do or anything we should do, but it's regard to Earl Schrader, who was the football coach, and I guess yesterday he was canned by the schools. And a couple of people have written letters, and I don't know what we can do, if we can do anything.
I did reach out to the principal of Avalon Schools about that, and I did receive a reply back this afternoon. She just advised me that it was a confidential personnel matter and that they did not have a statement on that.
Okay. I guess that's it.
Okay, a couple things. As some of you might have noticed, we've moved, Public Works, in an effort to improve the front of improve the library. One of the bike racks have been removed, and the other one has been placed there. For those of you who had your bikes parked there for a long time, if you're looking for them, they would be up at the city yard. And who should they contact if they're looking for their bikes?
They can just come by City Hall.
Okay, just come by City Hall. It appears, since I've only seen like 3 bikes hooked up there, that a lot of them are truly derelict. And so I don't know what we can do about those derelict bikes in the future if somebody's looking for one. How do we dispose of now what we've got? What's the process?
Well, so for those that are up at the yard, what are we going to do with them? Is that the question?
Right, yeah.
We don't have an auction policy or process. We could do something like that. What we unfortunately have done in some years past is destroy some of the bicycles. It depends on the condition of some of them. Some of the bikes are not
Right.
rehab
Right.
able, if you will. But we could see about maybe they could be donated to those who need them, or there could be an auction. We could explore that.
Maybe in the future that might be kind of fun. Years ago, the sheriff's department used to fix some of those bikes up for kids for Christmas. I don't
Good
see
chore to
Doug,
give Doug.
I don't
I like
see
that.
Doug jumping on top of that one.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate that.
They're not busy enough
No,
already.
but now they're gonna be chasing dogs too. So yeah. Anyway, okay. So the bike racks. Got a letter from somebody who comes to the island all the time, and maybe y'all got it too. But it doesn't appear that in the cabs there's any postings of what the rates are or anything like that. And it appears that in the real world that happens. They also were talking about the outrageous expense to get, to go a half a block. It's, to go to the boat to a hotel, it's $12 but anyway, if we could follow up to see if they are posting those rates. That's the one, and then the second is those rates on a regular cab business. Then, how are those rates established? Not on the Art of the Dialer, but on the cab.
I don't know how other cities establish that.
What did you say, Mayor Pro Tem?
They're not regulated.
Is there a way to regulate that somehow?
Well, I'll say this. The Catalina Transportation receives a subsidy from the city of Avalon. And so we are in discussions with Catalina Transportation on the arrangement and how we might reform how that subsidy is used.
Not this. I'm not talking about subsidy. I'm talking about taxi fares.
Right. I understand.
Fare box.
Yeah.
Right. I understand what you're saying. I'm just.
Okay,
I guess
be in
my
there
point
too.
being, we do have some
Okay.
leverage, if you will, because they do receive a large portion of money from the
Right,
city.
okay.
Right.
Okay. And then the April 7th council meeting. There's been a discussion about you. I know you're going to be out of town. And I know we may now be having a meeting on the 31st. What else we got going on? Is that a meeting that we still want to have, or since we're going to have one on the 31st, and maybe we can throw a couple of items on there?
Sure.
I don't know. Council, what's your pleasure? Council.
Well, originally, I was contacted to find out whether or not I would be okay with not having a council meeting that week. And so we never really talked about that. I am okay not having a council meeting that week, but had asked for a council meeting on the 31st of March for other reasons, to have some other things on the agenda. So I'm happy to participate in the 31st, but if we've got several quick items, because for lots of things I'd prefer to have our city manager here for council meetings. So I would like to have our meeting on the 31st and be able to discuss with Ben ahead of time any of the items, and then potentially skip that first week of April and go to the second meeting.
Because you're not here on the 31st also.
No, but we do know some of those agenda items ahead of time, so being better prepared than our regular April meeting, so.
Council members?
I think if something needs to be heard on the 31st, we can put it on the agenda. I can pass on the first meeting in April.
Councilmember Sampson? Is that okay? 31st, is the rest of us going to be in town? Rich?
I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. 31st this month. That's all right with me.
It's 2 weeks from tonight.
That's all right with me.
All righty, then
Okay.
we'll.
So that means no council meeting on
April 7th.
April 7th, but definitely a council meeting at 6 p.m., I presume, on the 31st of March.
Yes.
Okay.
April Fools.
Okay.
And Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I did misspeak. There is in section 5-14-06, or 05, it does say that rates need to be posted in the cabs.
Okay, then. Give him a computer, see what he can do.
I know, he's great. Thank you. When was that? As of what year? 05?
77.
Campbell, did he beat you to
1977?
that?
No, I'm looking at special
Okay.
permits.
All righty.
Yeah.
Some other stuff in there too.
And I think they should be posted at on the window.
I will follow up.
Code doesn't say this. It needs to be posted to be visible to the passengers.
Okay, so I think before they hop in, it'd be nice to know what they're getting into. Okay. All righty. So, oral communications. This is the opportunity for those of you who would like to address us at this time. On a non-agenda item, no action will be taken, and we'd like to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anyone have anything to talk about?
Martin, 352 Catalina. I was at a Rotary meeting and sat with an Edison guy who was in charge of the power. And this was several weeks ago, and he said the desal plant is running full bore, believe me. At the meeting last week, Ron Haidt said that the town demands 180,000 gallons a day, and the desal plant puts out 200,000 gallons a day. I don't know where that extra 20,000 goes, but I don't really care. And then in the paper, that Thursday after that, they came out and said the desal plant's not running at full bore.
Yep.
Now, I think it's a matter of semantics, but I got so many people saying, what is really the truth? And that's all I'm saying. I think somebody should put something in the paper stating that the desal plant runs 5 days a week, 7 days a week. Just let us know from what it is. Because, I mean, I've got one guy in particular who's just driven me nuts with, it's not running. I read it in the paper, and I just think we should have somebody write an article that says what really happens, what it's really doing.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Chuck.
Can I respond to that by chance? Because I asked this question myself over the last week or so, and I've equally been asked that question. So at the last council meeting, I asked Ron Haidt, is the desal plant running? And he said, yes, it is. And then when I delved into understanding how much, the response, as I understand it, is that right now our needs change day to day as to how much water we need based on who's on the island, how much gallons are going out, et cetera, et cetera. So then the plant produces what the call is for that day at that time. And then anything over that is pumped up to the Baker tank. But once the Baker tank is full, they can't pump any more up there because otherwise it would just overflow, and that's not a good use of the plant's energy and certainly cost in running the plant in general. So they run to make sure that that is full and run to make sure that the needs of the call of the day or during a period of time are met. So that could potentially be 160,000 today. It could be potentially 170,000 tomorrow, but that's my understanding of it. And so I would respectfully request that if I'm incorrect in that information, please, Edison, correct me, because that's what my understanding is. And we're not going to run the desal plant and try to make 225,000 gallons of water a day if we don't need it or there's no place to take it. So
I almost feel like I should go home, Councilmember Cassidy, because you explained it perfectly. Yeah, there's no need for me anymore here on that. No, the way it works is there's 4 units out there, each of them capable of making 50,000 gallons of water. And while the reduction is affected because of the city's efforts in energy conservation or water conservation, we're taking this opportunity to take some of those units offline, rotating them, and making tune-ups to them, more or less. Mm-hmm. So this is an excellent opportunity for us to do tune-ups. We're making enough water to meet Avalon's needs, and just like you stated, when there's a reduction, we take one of those offline. So yes, it's going, it's working, it's doing what it's supposed to do and working as designed. We're just taking opportunities when we don't have that demand for water to do tune-ups to those units. We'd rather do them now than have them fail in the summer because we didn't give them the proper attention. So, thank you.
Great.
So when it's needed, it's running 7 days a week for the amount of water that plants need. I understand Hamilton Coast different.
It's different. My understanding is that it runs every day, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to produce 200,000 gallons a day. But it is an incorrect statement to in my understanding to say that the desal plant is not running, because it is. And you see that with the water level not changing in the reservoir and over so many weeks now, and also being able to meet the needs of what's coming through.
I'm sure it's a matter of semantics, and some people don't understand.
I think the other thing that I find sometimes difficult is that, you know, I think it's fair to say anybody can write an editorial for the paper, whether it's factual or not. You know, and the papers do a good job of, you know, printing editorial when they receive it. It's not the paper's responsibility to determine whether it's correct. It's just their, you know, they're printing. So I'm going to say that I'm sure Edison would welcome phone calls if somebody is asking that question. You know, I am sure that they would be willing to straighten that information out.
I believe it was March 8th that the Catalina Islander newspaper ran an article explaining it just the way you stated it and the way we shared it. So it's kind of like, I have to go up the grapevine, I need more horsepower. Now I'm driving level, I don't need as much horsepower to get me to where I want to go. Thank you.
I believe it's public knowledge. You can go to the control room at Edison. You can find a log out there that tells you exactly how much water they produced on a daily basis. So, I mean, it's homework, but I believe you can go to Edison and request that to see that log and see exactly how much they've been. I think that's public knowledge.
Allison Osinski, 356 Sumner. A couple things. First, Joe, I was just wondering if you checked in to see if we qualify under SARA Title III, which is an EPA, the Superfund Amendments and Reauthorization Act. There is funding available for cities with hazardous materials cleanup, and I do have the phone numbers for that if you're interested. I just didn't know if we'd qualify under that or not. Second thing is a repeat. I'm still waiting to find out when the study about personal desalinization plants will be completed and when the moratorium will be lifted so we can put our own in if the city's not going to put in a desalination plant that meets the needs of the community. So I'm still waiting for the answer on that one for another couple weeks. Any answer on that yet?
So, Mayor, actually this week I have a meeting that Southern California Edison has requested on the topic of residential desal units. The city attorney's office has provided me with some background and some assistance for that discussion because there are several concerns that have been raised about the city's ability to permit those type of uses, and so as a first step I need to have that discussion with Edison about that.
And was ES working on something too?
They're working on a draft discharge permit, but we parallel path this so that there's a lot of considerations to be made. It's not as straightforward as it seems.
So the answer is nobody knows yet?
No, it's not that we don't know. I'm having a discussion with Southern California Edison on Thursday of this week, and they're going to express their concerns and their issues with the prospect, and we have some things that we need to chase down too.
Okay, so at this 31st meeting, there's going to be an announcement about this, what the results of this are?
If there's something that we can share, we certainly will.
Okay. And item number 3, very quickly. It's been exactly 2 years since Southern Catalina Island Company announced the donation of land for the use of a swimming pool and rec center. And I've noticed it's turned into a construction equipment parking lot and horseshoe pits. But, you know, again, I'm just asking, what's the status? Has anybody even had a meeting with the island company about what's going on about the donation of this land?
Mayor, if I could on that topic.
2 years later again.
This land was actually never donated. The city, in fact, leases this land from the island company. We recently were asked by a couple of contractors on the island to use that location as a staging area for some projects in town. We were in the process of trying to remove all the construction equipment from that location so that it can return to purely recreational use. But again, it is property that we lease from the island company. There is no discussion that I'm aware of, no movement that I'm aware of to donate that land to the city.
Okay, I only asked because they specifically gave us the outline of the land and we went out and marked it off when they did it. And it's exactly where the Field of Dreams are. It goes from the tree line to the lifeguard headquarters to the golf course to the laundry area for the casitas. They
That's fine.
specifically
I just
told
have
us
not
it
been made
was
aware
that
of a
land.
donation.
And I don't know that it was ever finalized, but they identified it for that purpose, and I'm just asking, why hasn't anything moved forward on that?
Well, have you asked the island company why they haven't donated the land to the city?
They said it's the city holding it up.
How can we hold up somebody giving us free land? That doesn't
We
make
have to
any
give
sense.
Well, I understand there are several issues, but that's
Right.
my whole point. Come on, it's 2 years. Let's talk about these issues
Well,
and get them finalized.
and you know what? I mean, if I'm not the bearer of bad news, somebody else can be, but when we're in a water shortage until an additional water, I don't know, it's just my opinion, until additional water source is found, there's not going to be anything going on. I don't know. Y'all might say we could be building, but if we don't have any water, I don't know how we're going to do that. Go ahead, you're thinking.
Well, I do not want to talk out of turn because I'm thinking back a couple years, but it was my understanding in very low conversations that there was never going to be a donation of land. There was a request for a swap of land in which the island company potentially wanted pieces or parts of the Joe Machado field in exchange, and things moved around, and I'm totally talking out of turn, so please don't quote me. I don't want anybody upset. But that was my understanding of it. It was never a donation of land. It was a swap of land with a very large development agreement that was encompassing all kinds of other things. And it is not something that they just said, here, have this land.
I understand it was never finalized, but what I'm saying is, a year ago when everybody was running for election, every one of you said it was a priority, that you wanted to see that pool and that rec center built, and here we are another year later and nothing. So what I'm asking is, what are you doing to help this move forward so that this does get finalized eventually?
Well, I would like to clarify that I did not, against the email that you sent to me, I did not run my campaign on building a rec center, nor did I run my campaign on having this pool built. I do agree that it would be wonderful if we did have a recreation center in town. I would love to have a pool in town. However, the city doesn't have $24 million to build this recreation center or put a pool in at this time. So, please be clear that that is not what I ran my campaign on, but I do agree that it's a value to the community. But where are we going to get the money? How are we going to fund this? These are all much bigger pictures, and I've said it several times up here, as we've had conversations, that there has been a tremendous amount of work done by Cal Parsons and others that were involved in a committee. And we need to reach out and find out what that was, what the financials were, where is the possibility of getting any money. That's all, but that to me is not my top 10 priority. So I want to be very clear about that. I think we have a saltwater system we need to work out. We need to figure out where we're going to get water. We need to figure out how we're going to handle our sewer issues. We've got a cease and desist order that we may be closing our beaches in 2016 if we can't meet the needs of this. I mean, we have some really serious issues in this town. So I just, please.
I understand it's not your number one priority issue, but like I said, we have a pool committee, we have a rec committee. We're willing to meet with you. We want to see it moving forward, and it's stalled. And so that's what I'm just here asking. What are you doing to see it move forward?
As Cindy was right in her assessment, it's part of a larger scale development, and the island company has elected not to talk to us in the last 2 years about that. We've asked them, we've sent them a letter with some questions attached, and they haven't responded. Until they respond, we can get the ball going. And that's basically what we're doing. It's a land swap between Joe Machado and Field of Dreams, which is part of a development agreement covering a hotel, some homes, some other stuff. Luckily, Vons isn't in that because it'll still be held. But until the island company decides they want to talk to us about it, there's nothing we can do.
Okay, well, I'm just, again, bringing it up, asking you to please move forward on this.
Yeah, and that was part of mine, what you're talking about. It was part of my thing when I ran a few years back. And we're stuck with, again, no property. That's the big issue also. As much as we have met before with the island company. And again, like Ole said, we haven't had a response back from anybody.
Just sharing your passion for that pool.
And I couldn't agree. I wish we need a center, but priorities are priorities right now.
Okay, let's move on to the consent calendar.
Okay, Mayor, we've got 5 items on the consent calendar this evening. You have actions from the March 3rd council meeting. You have expenditures for your approval, warrants in the amount of $915,000 approximately, EFT in the amount of $95,000 approximately, 2 payrolls in the amount of $392,000 approximately, for a total of $1.4 million approximately. You have the second reading of the SRO ordinance. You have an item requesting authorization for swim float material purchase. You have the extension of the interim chief financial officer's agreement, and that's it. Those are the 5 items on the consent calendar this evening.
Council, what's your pleasure?
3.
You're pulling 3?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. And I just have one little question on the swim float.
The harbor master to come forward?
Yeah.
Brian, do you mind coming forward,
I
please?
just have a real quick question on the swim float.
Well, do you want to pull it? I mean, so if you're going to ask him
No,
to
it's
discuss
just a
it.
simple little question.
Oh, okay.
What's the occupancy or the weight load on something like that?
Well, I put a picture in there that shows a small vehicle.
Yeah. I saw that. So,
It's large. I mean, I had 3 people, 2 of them over 200 pounds, and myself standing on the edge of the dock, and it went down, maybe a half an inch.
okay.
But
Because it looks more like a mat, right?
Well,
I mean,
it's
So it goes underwater too.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's not a smart card.
About 1% of it.
Yes.
okay, that was it. Okay.
Under budget, too.
And it will be built in time for the season.
Okay, so we're pulling item 3. Anything else to be pulled?
Board of Harbor Masters.
Not for me, anyway.
Okay, then let's,
Move staff on 1, 2, 4, and 5.
Second.
any further discussion? Call for the vote.
Thank you, Chris Wojcik, for staying
All
another few
ayes.
months to help us.
Yeah, I know.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Very much.
Okay, item 3.
Amanda, you want? Thank you.
Amanda.
Hi there.
You pulled it. You told
I did,
me what
I did.
your questions are.
We got a letter from Greg Freeman raising a couple points.
Yes,
One of them I
read
agree with.
his-
Yep.
I read his letter.
You, and one I agree with and one I disagree with. Our employee housing requirements for the 50% of the peak summer employees, is that only under the inclusionary?
Yes, that's part of our inclusionary housing requirements, that new hotel, resort, or commercial development has to provide housing for 50% of their peak season employees.
And as Mr. Freeman points out, there are 2 types of inclusionary units. There are development inclusionary units and there are employee needs. If I build 4 units, I got to include 1 inclusionary unit. Or if I build, open a new business, I got to house 50% of my peak summer employees.
Correct.
And I think he does raise a point that could be confused, because if I build a bunch of residential units, I don't want us to fill the inclusionary need with SROs.
Right.
But if I'm trying to house my summer employees, SROs make sense in some cases. Because I think we have some SROs, I'm not sure that Monkey Town's an
The
SRO.
inclusionary requirements go to it being affordable housing. It has to be income, the inclusionary units have to be income restricted. So if you build 8 units, 20% of them have to be affordable.
Right.
Okay.
But his point is the affordability could be met by SROs.
The affordability would be met by the income restriction. Yes, I see, I wanted
Yes.
to. Yes. When the commission is approving a project and they are required to provide inclusionary housing, the commission could say, yes, we're going to let you build affordable SROs rather than affordable two-bedroom units.
Which I think probably goes to Mr. Freeman's point that it probably goes against the best interests of Avalon.
Well, the only thing I would say is that this is a state requirement, that we have to have this, and the purpose of the state requirement is to have
I know that.
low income.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking the type of low income,
Right.
and I'm talking what demands it. If it's employee housing for the summertime, SROs are just fine. But if we're talking inclusionary housing for development, I don't believe SROs fit the needs of Avalon.
And I agree with that. I agree that I would not want any housing that we built for year-round residents to always be a studio apartment with a bathroom down the hall. I agree with that. But I think where we're getting off, where Mr. Freeman gets out of topic a little bit, is the purpose of this ordinance is just to say, if someone wants to build an SRO property, these are the two zones where we're going to allow them. And these are the guidelines for an SRO. It doesn't say that we are going to let everyone meet their inclusionary requirements. I think a lot of the points that Mr. Freeman makes would be excellent things for us to consider when we get ready to rewrite our inclusionary ordinance, which we have said we were going to work on this year because we need to rewrite our density bonus law ordinance to comply with state law. And so I think he makes a lot of valid points, but I think the better place for it is in our inclusionary housing guidelines, where we say 20%, you have to meet a 20% requirement or an affordability requirement, and that would be the place to say, however, you can only, a certain percentage of your inclusionary requirements can be met with SRO.
I would just add that condition number 10, the critical language is that it has to be an approved inclusionary housing plan. So whatever plan he comes forward with, or a developer comes forward with, planning commission has to approve it, and if someone doesn't like it, they appeal it to the city council. So this is not something that was going to sneak through on a project. It has to go through the public process.
All have to go through the public process, and stuff doesn't sneak through. You say you're going to revise the inclusionary ordinance this year?
Yes.
Okay, and so as part of that, you would say SROs are not appropriate for housing development inclusionary?
That's an option.
That's an option.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, the process of this ordinance, does that need to go through planning commission, or could we as the council do that?
The inclusionary ordinance?
Yeah.
Yes, it eventually comes to you just like this one.
Yeah, I guess we get it.
It starts in planning, but it obviously ends up here. But you could, prior to that, we could have a study session where you could give direction to the planning commission on what you'd like to see in inclusory housing ordinance.
So maybe we have a joint meeting to talk about.
A joint meeting would be fine, but I would at least like to put out there that I would love to participate in whatever process I can ahead of time before it, as we're talking about changes and all that.
And I think his discussion about parking comes up under the transportation study.
Yes, and I just wanted to clarify, and I think we talked about this last month, that when you have an SRO where they do not have a kitchen, they do not qualify under our vehicle code to register a vehicle. So if we had a property that was building SROs where they did not have their own private kitchens, those units would not qualify for registered vehicles, and so that particular project probably would not be required to have off-street parking. Again, that would be a project-by-project decision.
So I have another question. I don't know how it fits into this, maybe it doesn't. But if you have a unit and that was at one point a single family unit, and then you put 7 and 8 employees in it and charge each of them rent, what is that?
A savvy business person, some people might say. I think the challenge in that, I'm sorry, that was not very respectful.
No, that's okay.
I think the challenge in that situation, or what I think most people have concerns with in that situation, is overcrowding, where you have far too many people living in a house that was originally designed to be a single-family residence. unfortunately, cities, my understanding is, cities have not had a lot of luck imposing occupancy limits because it's really hard. You can't define what a family is. You can't say who. It's difficult to set, for cities to set occupancy limits that most people might consider.
But that is employee housing, not a single-family residence. If you're grabbing, if 6 or 7 people living in a place are all paying rent,
Right.
and now you've got, you know, these whatever standards, you got to have 33, whatever the heck, 330 square feet, and now you got 8 people living in 600 square feet and charging each of them rent. Isn't there something kind of unlawful about that?
Yeah, and
It's called
that's
cubic airspace.
right.
You only allow so much in that. You can only have. Go ahead.
And if so, if that is the case in Evelyn, what do we do about it?
I know that there are state codes that limit this, that we adopt the state codes, which do put limitations on the number of people per certain units. What we can't do is we can't say the type of people that they are. Like you know, we can't say it has to be a family, but we can put we have put limitations through the state code on the number of people. I just don't have those in front of me.
Mayor, are you just asking if we become aware of an overcrowding situation in a place? What do we do to respond to it? Is that the question?
Yeah, well, is it legal, number one, to do that and charge 7 or 8 people to all live in one residence? You know, when it's typically, it's employee housing. And so, whatever that question is, I'm just wondering how right that is, or how legal that is, or what.
We can do restrictions on overcrowding. It's through the state law. And so I can provide an update.
If you wouldn't mind, I don't know if anybody else is interested in that, but anybody else interested to find out?
Sure.
Okay.
Why not?
Might be something the fire department want to look into. Yeah, Chief Craig might help with that.
Okay.
Okay,
Checking
thank
on
you.
our cubic airspace and all that.
Any more questions for me?
No. Okay, what's your pleasure?
Move 3.
There's been a motion to approve item number 3. Is there a second?
Okay, so I'll second.
Okay, for the comment, call for the vote.
Let's see, we have 4 ayes and 1 no. Councilmember Hernandez.
I look forward to the revised inclusionary ordinance.
Yeah. Okay, general business.
Yes, Mayor, we have one item on general business this evening. I'm going to ask Gina to join Denise over on the dais. This is the proposed increase to the saltwater and sewer fees for fiscal year 15-16 on the property tax roll. So Gina will be providing the staff report on this. Gina, is there an attachment that... okay, she's going to distribute an attachment that will aid in the discussion. I don't know, Gina, if we have any for the audience, if anyone in the audience would like to have that too.
Yep, Gina, there we go.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
You have some for the audience to do if they want?
I do.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Let's see. On? Are we good?
Yep.
We're here tonight to present a table identifying rate increases for sewer and saltwater. The last time the city brought this to the council was 2 years ago. And the background, as you all know, has to do with the financial status of both the sewer and saltwater funds. Sewer is the cease and desist order that has been going on since April 5th, 2012, and has occupied quite a bit of our time in terms of identifying the capital improvements required for the system and obtaining clean water status with the state. Going forward, it's required that we meet significant requirements. And some of them are studies, and some of them are actual capital improvements along the way. Dennis Jayich has identified that plan with our consultant over the last few years, and Denise has also been involved significantly in that as well. So tonight is a part of a process that we like to do annually, and that is to present to you rate proposals that would take place July 1st, 2015 for the next fiscal year. And I'm available for questions on that, but what I'd like to do is to take you to the last page. And what we've done is created a table of percentage increases from 10 to 30% for each. And just to give you a little bit of history, 2 years ago when we did bring this forward and it was approved, there was a 10% increase for sewer, which was equivalent of $3.61 increase a month, a total of $43.32 a year. That totaled a revenue source for the city, for the sewer fund, of $132,347. In terms of salt, the approved rate was a $1.55 increase a month for a total of, or $18.60 a year for residential, for a total of $51,177 revenue for that period of time. And we are bringing forward, again, the similar rate increases between 10 and 30%. This is something, and I should describe the handout I have given you. This is the current budget. What we have for the audience as well are the revenues and expenditures summarized in buckets. And when you go from the beginning, revenues, the annual service charge, you'll see $1.5 million for sewer. Salt is $422,000. Going down, and that's the annual user charge. Going down to expenditures, I've broken them up into salaries and benefits, maintenance and operations, contractual services includes ES, environs, sewer capital, and saltwater capital for each of those totals. As we follow down to revenue expenditure summary, this is where the story is told. Revenues are less than expenditures. On the sewer side, this is totals a $605,000 deficit. We presented this last November, you're familiar with it. And if we remove capital from that, $264,000, there's an operations deficit of $341,000. And of course, related to the cease and desist, there's operational expenditures associated with that, not just capital. And you go down to the reserve summary, we have estimated, I should say beginning balance, that's me, estimated beginning balance, that was ending balance for the prior year, of $805,815. You remove the deficit of $605,000, and you have only $200,000 remaining in savings for the coming next year. And since we are running a $341,000 operational deficit, you can see that's without CPI increases, that we're going to have to take a loan from the general fund in the sewer fund. That's not including capital improvements that Dennis Jayich has brought forward to you in our 10-year plan. Saltwater, moving to the column to the right, $422,000 total revenue, a minor amount for interest income. Expenditures, again, moving down. I want to just make a quick note. The maintenance and operations line of $178,000, we put that in, that's a ES amount regarding what I call the Band-Aid solution. It is money that, if there's a saltwater break, we use it. It's considered maintenance. It's not necessarily capitalized. So that's why it isn't a capital expenditure. It isn't a project. So it's getting more and more expensive for us to put Band-Aids on the system. And as we move down, you'll see we've got capital improvements of saltwater fittings. Dennis Jayich, our Public Works Director, has indicated a significant amount, about $550,000 over the next 10 years for that. Hopefully sooner, since it is breaking faster. And an electrical panel. And then as we move down, revenue and expenditures. Again, the summary for that is revenues $422,000, expenditures $874,000, for a deficit of $452,000 in the current year budget. If we remove capital, that of 200,000, we have an operations deficit of 252,147. In the current fiscal year, we had a beginning reserve balance of 587,000. With that deficit of 452, we now have 135,000 left in our savings account. And when you compare that to the operations deficit of 252,000, you can see we'll be getting a loan from the general fund just to operate. That doesn't include the CIP that you're familiar with for the next fiscal year. So it gives you an idea of where we're at. It isn't necessarily getting better at this time. And you know I'm a positive person. So we are getting better water quality reports, but the system needs improvement and updating. So that's why we're coming forward with these rate increases. And I'd like to pass it to anybody else who has anything additional to say. I should note that you have heard, I believe, 2 sessions from BB&K regarding public financing options, infrastructure financing options, and there's also grant opportunities as well.
And the only legal procedures, we will go through a Prop 218 process when we send everyone notice. The purpose of tonight is to set forth what you want that notice to say in terms of the rate at the actual hearing, the actual Prop 218 hearing. You can adopt that rate or you can go lower. You cannot go higher. So the notice that you send out on the Prop 218, that sets your ceiling in terms of the rates. And it may be that you can set a ceiling, and then depending on what happens at the public hearing, and depending on the response that you get, you can keep that, or you can say, wow, we've really upset a lot of people, or there's some other factors, you can lower it. So whatever rate you direct staff, that's the highest. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the actual rate.
So we might as well start at like 60%.
Well, you could. I mean,
yeah.
You could.
Come on, you have to have a little levity, guys.
Yeah, no, 60's too high. I'm not asking for a 60% increase.
Well, I'm not either.
Yeah, no,
okay,
I know,
the headlines, mayor asked for a 60%
You'll
increase.
get shot upon leaving the building.
I'm joking. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem. You have something intelligent to say.
I'll try to be intelligent. You were right on that 60%. That's what it would take for the salt water to break even.
I know.
And for the sewer to break even, it would take a 22% increase. But that's a big swipe at one time.
Yes.
And I think this council's goal should be to get these 2 enterprise funds to break even in the next 2 years. So that if we had a 30% increase in the sewer this year and an 11% increase in the salt this year, and then we do the same thing next year, we'll get it so there'll be a break even plus inflation. Whatever inflation's running. Because I think we had an opportunity a couple years ago or 3 years ago to start this process to get this whole, and unfortunately we weren't successful then. We did 2 years ago, we missed last year, and I think it's the only way to responsibly to do this. Also, what Gina said is we've taken the proposed capital expenditures out of this revenue need, because that's something that should have been ongoing, and someday we'll have to, capture our capital needs too, whether it be through public financing or whether it be through rates. I mean, we can't continue to have the hemorrhaging, and I think it would be too much, I think, to go what we need in 1 year, but I think if we could step up in 2 years, I think it's a doable thing.
Let me ask a question that I asked somebody. This is another no dumb questions, right? So anyway, who sets the rule, the law that has been there forever, that says the money that goes into the harbor, that is raised in the harbor, stays in the harbor?
The rules that govern the enterprise funds, those funds may only be used for their intended purpose. That's a state law, I believe.
Yes, it's a state law that says that if you enact a fee, and when you enact the fee, what you do is you say what you're going to use that fee for, and you can't then spend the money elsewhere.
Okay.
Harbor use fee?
Harbor use fee.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
And
or
like the $250, the wharfage fee.
Right.
that we
The
get.
wharfish fee, it goes to, there's a specific purpose for it. You can't take money out and use it on something else.
Okay. So I guess the question is, what is out there an option? Because if we have 1 million visitors a year, and how do we get a buck or two from them? Because they're using all of our infrastructure as well. What's a creative way to get money from them?
You are through the restaurant, the sewer and salt fee we're charging the restaurants, the sewer and salt fee we're charging the bars, the hotels, the transient rentals.
I mean more directly than that, because those are percentages, those aren't straight dollars.
Okay.
I mean, they're dollars.
Well, you could create a tourism improvement district. You could do something like that, or a business improvement district that are defined geographic areas where people that are using those are assessments for the properties in that area where that money has to be spent to improve those areas. You could do something like that.
Or you could pass a general tax on, call it a visitor tax, and so when they come in addition to
Like a resort fee.
yeah, they would.
When you go to Vegas and you see resort fee, same idea.
And that could go to our infrastructure stuff.
You could go to anything. You could.
I'll put it wherever we want.
But you'd
Right.
have to get the voters to.
The voters would have to approve that.
And you need 2/3 for a special tax.
Correct.
Yes.
And how do we collect that tax?
Or you
It would be the similar way as like TOT.
Yeah.
But this is part of what Wayne Griffin initiated some time ago with the possibility of a TBID, a Tourist Business Improvement District, whereas now where we're collecting transit occupancy tax on the hoteliers, a business improvement district would potentially collect a tax from all restaurants and potentially retail locations. And maybe not retail, but
It's all property owners. So you create the geographic location, and then you'd identify the property owners within that location, and then there would be a vote amongst them to determine if they wanted to implement this assessment upon themselves.
Because that's not costing the residents of Avalon anything.
Unless they
No.
went to that area and patronized the businesses in that area. So
No,
yes, it would.
okay, then I want a till at every way that people get to Avalon, and before they step on, here's their buck. So that we get that money directly. There's not somewhere more direct than that we can get it from the visitors.
Well, so it's that resort fee concept that
Right.
we talked about, but it just needs to go to the voters.
The
and you need
voters would have to
2/3
approve
approval.
that.
Yeah, you could capture whatever amount you got approved. But
I mean, because all
2/3.
of this is going on the property owners, and how many property owners we have?
2,000.
2,000. That's, it's kind of like Edison with the rates, it was only 2,000 of us. So we've got to somehow think outside of the box, because I agree we need that 30 and the 30, and we've got to get these funds out, but I don't think we can put all of it on the homeowners.
You're not. It's about half and half. Half on the business, half on the homeowners.
Okay, the people that live and work here, I know those
But
folks.
they're the ones that set the rates that our visitors pay.
Yeah, the businesses should be passing the increases on to their, to
cost of doing
the
business.
consumers.
Yeah.
That's the thought.
Okay, and right now that's coming into the forms of TOT.
No.
How is it coming to us?
They're currently being assessed.
I mean, they are, but again,
It's just the proposal is that you would assess more, and they would increase their costs correspondingly if you increase.
and it would be a separate little thing on their receipt that basically says
Or
that.
they'd build it into whatever their fees
just
are.
like when you stay at a hotel and you see, in Long Beach, you see a couple different tax lines below, or resort fees is some column.
I don't know, I think we might have to look at this, because it's not going to none of this is going to make us fat city to get a lot of the improvements done, so I would like us to maybe try to look along those lines at some point.
Am I correct, this is a 41% increase over the next 2 years, each year?
We're just asking for your direction as to what percentages you guys.
What Ole was proposing, that was realistically breaking even after 2 years, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's being realistic.
But that's 30% for salt and 11% for sewer.
Okay.
Separate funds, separate buckets.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I
What if
think
we
that
did it
the
over
main,
a few, what if we did it over 4 years? I mean, is that not really
We're going south every year.
Okay.
This way we're going to go south next year, next fiscal year, by half the deficit that we had this year. And then the year after that, we will break even, hopefully. And so we'll funds will just owe the general fund whatever the deficit is for next year.
So then each year we should probably tend to this, right? So that the increases
right.
don't,
Yeah.
people don't get paying this much.
It's something akin to the Edison and the way they did the water rates every 20 years.
Because there's a lot of people that live on fixed budgets. So I understand your concern about not just Mayor, I understand your concern about not dinging just the homeowners on this and businesses.
And Ken, that goes right, and then that's going to be passed down to the tenants.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But it's one of those things that kind of has to be done, correct?
Yeah, and the other thing I'd offer is that if you look at the rates that other cities charge for these types of fees, I mean, Avalon doesn't charge anywhere near what most other cities charge. And the reason being is that it takes a lot to keep these funds going.
Well, nobody else has salt water but us.
Well,
right?
but they certainly all have sewer.
Yeah. And Mr. Sampson, do you remember in the budget we talked about a rate study for the sewer and salt, which hasn't been undertaken yet? So probably when we discuss the rates next year, besides adjusting them on a percentage basis, we might allocate them differently by different users.
In the budget. So
In the budget, also in the whole 218 discussion, where maybe the restaurant, maybe the home goes down $10 a month, and maybe the restaurant goes up $2 a month. I don't know. We haven't done the survey yet.
Okay, so this isn't all bad news for the duration of life. I mean, for the homeowners, that is. I mean, because this is something that should actually be in our budget, correct, and be sucked up into the budget, but it just hasn't worked out that way.
Well, I'd say that, basically you have old deteriorating systems that are anemic in their funding mechanism. We don't draw anywhere near what we need to keep them running, and it's getting worse, it's not getting better, and that unless some type of action is taken, we're going to continue to eat away at the reserves at a really rapid rate. And it's just not something that we can stand by and let happen. We're going to have to take some type of action to start. I mean, I understand people will ultimately, we're asking them to pay some more money on these bills, but the choice is either that happens or else the city eventually loses all the reserves.
Going into the future, new growth is going to be more apt to pay into this, correct?
That's right.
At a higher level.
Development
In other words,
fees.
The price of doing business in Avalon is going to be a little more if you want to start something new going into the future, because you're trying to build onto a system that's kind of somewhat getting dilapidated, and we need to upgrade it.
The goal is not only to have new developments come in and pay for the infrastructure on their site, but also downstream, to the extent that we have infrastructure that is, you're going to have more effluent going through it. Part of their development cost is to help the city pay for upgrading the infrastructure outside of their property.
Is it realistic?
That's what we've been talking about for a few years. We brought it up, and yet we have to act on it. It's been 2 years, and we talked about developer fees and infrastructures, and here we are again.
Well,
and we're making the residents pay for the price. Should have had that developer's fee years ago.
Developer fee is not just
the developer's fee is what we have now in place. Obviously, is not working. Right.
The developer fee is the capital portion to make the improvements to the system that the developers additional burdens putting on it. It's not to subsidize the ratepayer. That's why I asked them to split the capital out. So we're just talking about the operation expense of providing the two services.
Developer fees aren't used for day-to-day operation, just for capital.
Yes, just for capital.
So this money will be set aside from new development. It's our responsibility to make sure it goes into Mr. JH's projects that he's going to be coming up with into the future, right? In our redeveloping our sewer system, right?
Right. These two fees are called restricted funds. I'm sorry. So what that means is the sewer rates, whatever dollars, can only be used for sewer projects. Salt water can only be used for salt water. It's restricted, can't be used for anything else. Right now there's a deficit, so we're taking the general fund, which can be used for anything, and we're taking the surplus in the general fund and using it for these funds that are running deficits.
So Ole kind of gave some numbers. Do we want to start with that and play with those and see where we go from there?
So I think if I heard that correctly, it would be 30% salt water and 15% sewer.
That was 11?
11.
Oh, 11.
I think we ought to, I would say, let's go to 15 so we
15.
can negotiate down from there at least. We're safe.
Uh-oh.
Like, we did not too long ago.
Seems reminiscent of another meeting I was at.
Do I hear 12%? Because the 15% on the sewer for, no, I'm sorry.
15% of the sewer for the homeowners raises it $5.95 to $6 a month.
Yeah.
$72 a year.
Yeah. Compared to what you came up with 4 something for your 11% or 408 or
yeah, something like that.
something. So I would start with it because we can always go down, we can't go up. That's what you told us.
That's true.
That's why that's 60%. Anyway.
30% on the salt would raise the annual fee by $3 or by $3.57 a month, or $35, $36.
Yeah.
Any motion we make towards getting these funds balanced is positive.
I agree.
But I don't think we can play the 10% game and the 8% game and the 5% game, no.
It's gotta be
It's time to
No, we got to do
bump
this.
the ball. Well, I'd say 30 and 15. What do you all think?
How about 35 and 15?
Oh, you want to start 35? We don't even know what those numbers
This
are.
is not an auction. Make a motion, please.
I'll make a motion for 35 and 15. 35 on the salt and 15 on the sewer.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Joe.
No,
Okay.
yeah, no, let's just second it, and then we can negotiate down from there.
It's-
If we need to, people might want this, they might want it just like that, so we can just get it done with and get the city back where we need to be.
I mean, that's us explaining to the community what the situation that we're in, you know?
And everyone will get a detailed notice. It's not just going to say what the rates are, it's going to be a pamphlet that will describe how the rates were derived, what they're used for, and it will also tell about the infrastructure situation.
Right.
So it's going to tell a story as to why these funds need to be raised.
So the motion was 35% for the sewer system, 15 for the salt water?
Vice versa.
No, vice versa.
Oh, vice versa, okay.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for comments? Public comment?
This does not solve our problem. This does cut down the deficit for next year, but we're still in the hole.
And there will be meetings on this, so.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Moved and seconded, other comments? Hearing none, call for the vote.
All ayes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Alrighty, and.
Thanks, Gina.
Hospital board.
Right
here.
I
We're
know.
getting there, we're getting
So
there.
I'm gonna, the Avalon City Council meeting is adjourned, and Ole?
I'd like to call to order the Avalon Municipal Hospital Board of Trustees for March 17th. What is March 17th? Roll call. Annie secretary.
Yeah.
Trustee Cassidy? Here. Trustee Hernandez?
Here.
Trustee Marshall?
Here.
Trustee Sampson?
Here.
And Chairman Olson.
Here. Mr. Harvey?
No announcements or written communications or presentation this evening.
Yes?
Oh, nothing. I just was, it was a sound of delight, perhaps.
No?
I'm staying away from
Getting
you.
ahead of me now. Now is the time for oral communication. The Board of Trustees will accept comments from the public at this time. No action will be taken on non-agenda items at this meeting. Speakers should limit their comments to 3 minutes each. Are we flocking to the podium? Nobody's flocking. Okay. Consent calendar.
Yes, there are 2 items on the consent calendar this evening. Actions from the December 16th, 2014 and January 20th, 2015 Board of Trustees. In addition, there's also the CEO's board report and the Chief Financial Officer's report. Let's see, the CEO's reports from January 2015 and February 2015. Excuse me. And the CFO's statement for December 2014 and January 2015.
Any board member want to remove anything from the consent calendar?
No.
Any discussion from the audience on the consent calendar items? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make-
I'll entertain a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Public? Call for the question.
All eyes.
General business?
None this evening.
Chair's report? None. Members report?
None.
I have one comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Surprisingly, but I just wanted to say that without going into too much detail, I very much appreciated the report that I read regarding Mr. Leonard Abresia, and I wanted to thank Don Sampson and Santa Dominguez for their service and care.
Very nice. Hearing no further business, we'll adjourn. How long does this one take?
2 minutes.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, Tony.